Chapter 2540. No matter how weak an existence at the seventh level of the Emperor realm was, it was still an existence that the myriad of living beings in the colossal world could only look up to. Yet now, he'd been swallowed by the golden lake in the blink of an eye and vanished. This was too horrifying, and Lin Sun couldn't help but shudder. Rumble! A wave of boiling sounds that sounded like rumbling thunder resounded from the bottom of the lake, and it shook the heavens and the earth. It caused the entire golden lake to roil violently as if something shocking was about to be born, and it caused a great commotion. The Emperor realm experts that hadn't left were astounded, and they retreated repeatedly from this terrifying aura. Such a commotion was too terrifying. Once they were affected by it, the consequences would be unimaginable. After that, under numerous shocked gazes, the golden lake suddenly started to condense and shrink rapidly. In the time of a few breaths, the enormous lake that covered an area of 30 kilometers had finally condensed into a blazing and dazzling golden spear. The spear seemed as if it was made by the heavens, and it was branded with extremely dense and profound veins and markings. It floated in midair and emanated a murderous aura that tore the nearby space into countless cracks. Most astounding of it all was that the spear was like a rain of light that transformed into numerous tiny golden figures that fluttered around the leaves, and it was an extremely strange sight. Stellar source weaponization and the laws are connected to the soul. This is a complete stellar source of the highest quality, and the laws of the Grand Tao contained within it are extraordinary. Someone exclaimed with shock while breathing heavily, and even his eyes had turned red. It was as if he'd seen a peerless beauty taking off her clothes and revealing her perfect body that caused countless people to drool. Stellar source was a type of mysterious precious treasure that was scattered and buried in the world of the trial. The higher the quality of a stellar source, the rarer it was, and the more shocking its value was. Moreover, a stellar source that was able to transform into a weapon like this one before them was extremely rare, and it was worthy of being called a peerless treasure. If one was able to obtain it, then it would undoubtedly be a great fortune. Now, such a precious treasure had appeared, and it instantly caused a stir in the surroundings and drew many greedy gazes. Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. He'd never imagined that his luck would be so good, and the first stellar source he'd encountered was already so shocking. His black pupils were like bolts of lightning as he swept the surroundings with his gaze, and then he said indifferently, "Even though the treasure is tempting, it depends on whether one has the life to fight for it." His words were like a bucket of cold water that was poured onto the Emperor realm experts present here, and it caused their entire bodies to tremble while the greed in their hearts transformed into terror. Whoosh! At the same time, Lin Sun had already taken action and grabbed the golden spear in the air. A strange scene appeared. The golden spear seemed to have a mind of its own. With a gentle sweep, a torrential rain of golden light whizzed out and wiped out Lin Sun's palm power. What? Lin Sun's face changed slightly. Even a ninth realm ancestor would have to use all his strength to defuse the power of his grasp. But now, they were easily swept away by the golden spear. This scene caused the pupils of the nearby emperors to shrink, and then they were overjoyed. They were naturally unwilling to let such a miraculous stellar source fall into Lin Sun's hands. Clang! The golden war spear released a clear cry. Like a streak of golden lightning, it tore through the sky, unexpectedly wishing to leave. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't care less about anything else. He suddenly took out the abyssal sword cauldron and suppressed the golden spear. Bang bang bang! In an instant, the golden spear erupted with monstrous killing energy, and it collided with the abyssal sword cauldron incessantly, causing earth-shattering rumbles. The terrifying power made many emperors tremble. It was just a stellar source, how could it have such a terrifying killing aura? And this also strengthened Lin Sun's determination to subdue the spear. He used all his strength and operated his cultivation. Not long after, in a burst of explosive sounds, the golden spear was firmly suppressed. The golden light that burst out from it was crushed inch by inch, and it made a wailing sound. Damn it! Is the stellar source going to fall into this guy's hands? That's not for sure. After he subdues the treasure, if we attack together, we may have a chance to snatch it. Seeing that Lin Sun was about to subdue the stellar source, the eyes of the people present flickered, and they were somewhat eager to make a move. However, someone made a move earlier than them. Swoosh! A crimson light suddenly swept out of the air and aimed at the back of Lin Sun's head. Its speed was faster than lightning, and it carried a terrifying penetrating force, and its momentum was extremely shocking. Lin Sun seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. Without looking back, he stretched out his arm, and with a bang, he crushed the spear, turning it into a fine rain of fire that scattered in the air. Interesting, you're actually able to resist a strike of mine. Along with this voice, an extremely robust figure appeared. This man's entire body was enveloped in crimson flames, and he was like a fiend god that was rampaging. His cold eyes were like blades, and he carried a monstrous and piercingly cold, baleful aura that swept through the sky with boundless ferocity. There were a few people following behind him, and all of their strengths were rather strong. Hui Yunj! A wave of exclamations resounded in the surroundings as they recognized the ferocious man. This person was from the profound sky galaxy that was ranked second in the colossal world. According to rumor, he was a peak 8th level demon emperor from the profound sky Dao mountain, and his true form was a fire qilin that possessed extremely ferocious and abnormal cultivation. This stellar source is mine. Ling Xuanzi, hurry up and fuck off if you don't want to die. As soon as Hui Yunj arrived, he revealed an extremely domineering attitude, and his figure teleported while carrying a myriad of flames as he soared into the sky. The flames were like a tide as Hui Yunj swung his fist out, causing the heavens and the earth to collapse as a myriad of flames erupted, and it seemed as if it intended to incinerate the heavens and the earth. Obviously, he intended to seize the critical moment when Lin Sun dealt with and suppressed the golden spear to kill Lin Sun and seize the treasure. Lin Sun didn't dodge, nor did he turn around to engage in a fierce battle. His entire body glowed while a large abyss surged out from his body, and it emanated an obscure energy that seemed capable of devouring the surroundings. Rumble! The might of Hui Yunj's palm strike hadn't even approached when it was crushed and obliterated by the large abyss, and it emanated an ear-piercing rumble. It seemed to be light, but in reality, Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked in his heart. Hui Yunj's strength was extremely formidable, and the surging flames contained boundless incineration energy. If it wasn't for him circulating his cultivation with all his might, it would be utterly impossible for him to deal with it so easily. But this thought merely flashed in his mind. In the next moment, Lin Sun was already concentrated before him, and the abyssal sword cauldron ceaselessly emanated its might, and it was already on the verge of completely suppressing the golden spear. Fuck off! Hui Yunj shouted explosively while his body was like a torrent of flames that was coiled with a violent glow of flames, and he opened his mouth to spit out a sea of flames that covered the heavens and the earth as it swept towards Lin Sun. For a time, the entire heavens and the earth were filled with flames, and it dyed the surrounding 5,000 kilometers red, while its impetus was monstrous and oppressive to the extreme. Everyone was able to discern that if Lin Sun didn't resist such an attack, then he would definitely suffer a heavy injury. But if he made a move, then all his previous efforts might be in vain, and he would miss the golden spear. Most importantly, there were still many strong people eyeing him covetously in the surroundings, and more people were rushing over from afar. The situation was full of variables. So, if he lost this opportunity before him, it would be impossible to get it back. At this moment, Lin Sun's eyes turned cold, and the killing intent in his heart surged violently. Whoosh! Suddenly, the 5 clones of Greenwood, Chihua, platinum, blackwater, and yellow earth burst out, and each exerted their utmost strength and released their innate abilities at the first possible moment. The way of life and death, the eyes of burning ashes, the sharpness, the seal of all living beings, all of a sudden, all of them charged towards Huiyang. Caught off guard, Huiyang's pupils dilated in shock, and his face turned green. He felt a fatal threat, and he didn't hesitate to use his trump card. Buzz! A snow-white beast bone surging with flames appeared, and it instantly transformed into a fire Kylan that was as huge as a mountain, and it released a boundlessly terrifying and violent aura of incineration. This piece of heaven and earth fell into an unprecedented turbulence. Taoism raged, and blazing rays of light scattered in all directions. The sun and moon lost their light, and the sky darkened. It was incomparably tragic. The nearby emperors were all shocked, and they hurriedly retreated. Such a battle made them feel suffocated and terrified. Puff! In the battlefield, Huiyang's figure shot out, smashing through the void, and before he could stand still, he had already coughed out a large mouthful of blood. His hair was disheveled, his body was broken, and blood flowed out. It was obvious that he had suffered a heavy injury in this battle. Many people were dumbfounded. Huiyang was a peak 8th level emperor, a pure-blooded descendant of Fire Kylan, and his foundation and talent were heaven-defying. But in a head-on clash, he suffered a heavy setback. Who would dare to imagine this before? Even Huiyang himself had a gloomy expression, and his heart was shaken. He didn't expect that dealing with Ling Xuanzi, a peak 6th level emperor, would cause him to be injured. This was even unacceptable to him. Boom! In the distance, the 5 clones exploded, and each of their auras was not weaker than Lin Sun's, as if 5 Lin Sun were attacking with all their strength. Just the aura that covered the sky and earth caused Huiyang's heart to turn cold, and he immediately chose to retreat, not daring to fight head-on. Previously, he had already used a trump card, and after seeing how terrifying Lin Sun was, he had already realized that if he continued to fight, the disadvantages would outweigh the advantages. Seeing Fire Cloud Song cower, many people were dumbfounded. Previously, he was so overbearing, and showed the supreme bearing of an 8th level emperor, but now he took the initiative to retreat. Did this mean that Huiyang had already sensed the danger, and realized that he wasn't a match for Ling Xuanzi? At this moment, boom! Lin Sun's main body activated the Abyssal Sword Cauldron, and finally subdued the Golden Spear, suppressing it into the Sword Cauldron. He suddenly turned around, and his eyes were as cold as lightning as he locked onto Huiyang in the distance, and his killing intent spread out like a tide. Huiyang's face was livid, and he didn't retreat, but there was a faint fear in his eyes. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, in the distant sky, there was a faint sound of something piercing through the air. It was like a note of death, and it made everyone's heart tighten. This meant that many powerful figures were rushing over. Lin Sun also knew that he couldn't delay any longer, or there would be changes if he delayed. "You'd better pray that you don't run into me again next time," Lin Sun said, and put away the 5 clones and moved away. Even when they saw his figure disappear, no one dared to chase after him. "Bastard! I'll definitely kill you next time. Definitely!" Lin Sun's words made Huiyang suffer great provocation and humiliation, and he screamed, and his aura was violent, and his expression was terrifying. The whole place was silent, and a strange emotion arose in the hearts of the heroes. Did it mean that the more flustered and exasperated he was, the more powerless and incompetent he was? Of course, no one dared to say anything. A terrifying figure like Huiyang was far from someone they dared to offend. P.S. Everyone voted enthusiastically yesterday. I'll add more tonight. Chapter 2541. Not long after, many powerful figures rushed over from all directions. However, Lin Sun had already left with the stellar source that had turned into a golden spear, which made these powerhouses who rushed over feel a little unwilling. But when they heard about Lin Sun's achievements, their expressions changed abruptly. Their hearts shook, and their unwillingness disappeared. Among them were the young man in a luxurious robe and his party. After hearing the news, all of them wiped off their cold sweat and secretly rejoiced. It turned out that what Emperor Zhu Lu said was true. Ling Xuanzi was indeed abnormally strong. Soon, the crowd dispersed one after another. After all, this was a place in the first zone of the trial world. There were also stellar source in other places. However, many people knew that there wouldn't be many chances to encounter such a miraculous stellar source in the future. Whoosh! In the sky, a streak of light flickered as if it was teleporting. In a few breaths, it disappeared at the end of the sky. This treasure is really amazing. On the way, Lin Sun's divine sense entered the abyssal sword cauldron. He saw that the golden spear that was covered with the power of law had turned into a ball of golden energy that was as dazzling as a small sun. The golden energy contained a type of rare profundities of the Grand Tao, and it was extremely powerful and complete. After sensing it, Lin Sun's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Back then, he had comprehended and mastered more than 5,000 kinds of Great Way in the core of the origin of all Taos. Among them, there were dozens of Great Way that were related to metal. But Lin Sun had never seen one that was similar to the Great Way contained in the golden energy. It was called the Feather True Gold Way. If one could comprehend and master it, they could bestow invincible killing power to anything. Even a blade of grass could cut down a star. It was the first time Lin Sun had seen such an incredible Great Way. After thinking about it, Lin Sun took out the stellar source and swallowed it into his body. The stellar source was a substance condensed from the mystery of the Great Way. When it was swallowed into his body, it immediately rushed into Lin Sun's imperial life realm. Then, the stellar source began to decompose and melt. Like a rain of light, it fell on the sun, moon, stars, mountains, rivers, flowers, and trees. In the blink of an eye, it was completely integrated into Lin Sun's cultivation. The speed was so fast that it was like ice melting into water. At the same time, Lin Sun sensed that he'd already completely grasped the emergence true gold Tao, and this sort of feeling was absolutely impossible to be described with words. It was perfect and flawless, and it seemed as if so long as he was willing, he was entirely capable of transforming stone into gold. The benefits of refining this stellar source were not limited to this. Even his natal world was covered in an illusory golden light. It was incomparably dazzling, like a world polished from metal. It emitted a sharp and firm aura, grand and glorious. At this moment, a strong feeling suddenly surged out from Chen Shi's heart. When he stepped foot into the 9th level of the martial ancestor realm, if he chose the heaven transformation true metal Tao as the ancestral Tao root, then it would be sufficient for him to easily become the ancestor of a Tao. Because the ascension true metal Tao was already a perfect and complete grand Tao, and there was utterly no need for him to painstakingly condense and comprehend it. Good treasure! Lin Sun exclaimed with admiration in his heart. However, he was clearly aware that a stellar source like the heaven transformation true gold Tao was absolutely a rare treasure that could only be chanced upon by luck in this trial world, and he was absolutely extremely lucky to be able to encounter one this time. Actually, according to the guidance of the Azure Sparrow, it was impossible for most of the stellar sources buried within the trial world to produce a stellar source of such a level. I wonder where Wen Xiaoheng is now. In the following period of time, Lin Sun didn't hurry on his journey, and he flew about in the first area while searching and searching all over. The first was to search for stellar source, and the more precious treasures like this, the better. The second was to find out Wen Xiaoheng's whereabouts, because if he wasn't eliminated, he would be a calamity in the end. A few days passed swiftly. The matter of Ling Xuanzi's accomplishments in battle had caused a stir in the first area since a long time ago, and countless participating martial emperors had found out about it. Many people that had taken Lin Sun to be their prey couldn't help but retreat. No matter how tempting Wen Xiaoheng's promise was, one had to be alive to take it. As for peak 8th level martial emperors like Yu Duqiu and Huiyunj, they also regarded Lin Sun as a competitor that they had to pay attention to. Even if Lin Sun's cultivation was only at peak 6th level martial emperor, no one dared to underestimate him. Especially in the first area, every time Lin Sun's figure appeared, many cultivators would regard him as a dreadful beast, and they would avoid him without waiting for a fight. Unfortunately, after searching the vast territory of the first area, Lin Sun didn't encounter Wen Xiaoheng. Later on, he found out that after entering the trial world, Wen Xiaoheng led a group of strong cultivators through the first area without stopping. However, Lin Sun didn't come back empty-handed. In the past few days, he had collected another 2 pieces of stellar source. Their quality was considered ordinary, and the mysteries of the great ways they contained were also ordinary. Even so, their value was extremely high, and 1 piece could be exchanged for 500,000 eternal void source crystals. Without further delay, on the 5th day of entering the trial world, Lin Sun crossed the road alone and entered the second area. With the guidance of his identity certificate, Lin Sun didn't worry about getting lost. Just like in the first area, Lin Sun searched for stellar source and inquired about Wen Xiaoheng's whereabouts. In the end, Lin Sun walked in the second area for 3 days. In these 3 days, he lost count of how many bloody fights he had witnessed, and almost all of them were fights for stellar source. The scenes were tragic. Some of the weaker martial emperors either escaped with serious injuries, or died in the fights. This was competition. In the vast 1,000 worlds, martial emperors were like the sky, supreme and boundless, and looked up to all living beings. However, in this trial world, scenes of martial emperors falling could be seen everywhere. Lin Sun also saw that many martial emperors who knew that they were weak went into hiding in order to protect themselves. They didn't participate in any competition at all, and naturally didn't plan to collect stellar source. Obviously, after realizing how terrifying the trial world was, they had completely given up and only wanted to survive. In these 3 days, Lin Sun didn't have a smooth journey. He encountered many conflicts and killings, but none of them could be considered a threat. In the end, when Lin Sun left, although he only collected 1 piece of stellar source, he obtained a bunch of spoils of war, all from the corpses of his enemies. All the treasures added up could be exchanged for at least 3 million first-class eternal void source crystals. The 3rd district, the 4th district, the 5th district. As time passed, Lin Sun's figure passed through one district after another. Although the scenery in each district was different, it was mostly the same. In order to fight for stellar source, battles broke out frequently, and blood and death could be seen almost everywhere. Some vicious and merciless people even resorted to murder and plunder in an attempt to collect enough stellar source in the shortest time possible. Lin Sun once encountered a robbery, but when they saw through his identity, the robbers immediately fled, scared out of their wits. Since he was robbed, Lin Sun wouldn't be polite. He was just worried that he didn't collect enough stellar source along the way. So he immediately started a chase. That group of robbers could be considered to have 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Lin Sun pursued them relentlessly, and in the end all of them were wiped out. By the time he entered the 6th district, Lin Sun had already collected 16 pieces of stellar source, and batch after batch of rich spoils of war. What made Lin Sun helpless was that the quality of these stellar source varied. Even the best piece could not be compared to the stellar source that had turned into a golden spear. Soon, Lin Sun noticed that the 6th district was obviously different. The world here was full of oppressive, decaying atmosphere. The mountains and the earth were all withered and cracked. From time to time, there would be black flying lights flashing in the void. The black flying lights were extremely vicious and full of corrosive power. They were called Ghost Light of Annihilation. If one didn't have the cultivation of Lawless Realm, he wouldn't be able to withstand the attack of Ghost Light of Annihilation. His spirit and blood would be corroded instantly, and he would die suddenly. Along the way, there were fewer and fewer people in the Emperor realm. Suddenly, there was an earth-shattering sound of fighting in the distance. Lin Sun's spirit spread out and immediately saw two groups of people fighting fiercely for the control of a black mountain. The black mountain was flowing with vitality like ripples. Obviously, there was a stellar source buried in it. This kind of scene was not uncommon in the previous 5 districts. Lin Sun had long been accustomed to it. However, just as he was about to leave, he suddenly frowned. He noticed that the people fighting were led by the Jade Star Judy. Moreover, the Jade Star Judy and the others were not in a good situation. They were completely suppressed. After thinking about it, Lin Sun stepped forward. Ling Xuanzi. Someone called out. It was a dignified man in a white robe. This was a peak 7th level emperor. He was leading a group of Emperor Realm cultivators to suppress the Jade Star Judy and the others. Obviously, the man in the white robe had seen through Lin Sun's identity. When he saw Lin Sun approaching, his expression became gloomy. Since you know who I am, I'll give you a chance. Disappear from here in 3 breaths. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Lin Sun said indifferently. The Jade Star Judy and the others also saw Lin Sun. They couldn't help but be surprised. During the period in the City of Beginnings, when they learned that Lin Sun was in a dangerous situation and had caused a great disaster, they all consciously distanced themselves from Lin Sun, drew a clear line, and acted like strangers. But they didn't expect that Lin Sun would take the initiative to interfere in this matter. The man in the white robe was obviously unwilling. His expression was ugly, but when he thought of Lin Sun's terrifying achievements, his heart trembled. In the end, he gritted his teeth and waved angrily, "Let's go!" He turned around and left with the others. Seeing this, the Jade Star Judy and the others couldn't help but be stunned. They knew all too well how terrifying their opponent was. When they were fighting before, they had already given up hope of obtaining the stellar source. Who would have thought that after Lin Sun arrived, he didn't even make a move. Just one sentence was enough to make the man in the white robe and the others retreat. That kind of power was like the arrival of a god. P.S. More updates. Recently, on the official account of Goldfish, I've answered some of the plot questions that people are most concerned about. I've also compared the strength of the Master of the Heart Core and the Lord of Oracle Mountain. If you're interested, you might as well follow me. Open it, follow it, and you'll see it in the history. If there are more people following the official account, I'll add more updates tomorrow. Chapter 2542. This scene also deeply shocked Jade Star Judy and his people. After a while, Jade Star Judy said in a low voice, "Brother Ling, thank you this time." Lin Sun said casually, "I owe you a favor in the ancient nightmare battlefield last time. Now I return it." Jade Star Judy was stunned and said with a wry smile, "Brother Ling, you must be joking. Last time, I just wanted to take the opportunity to seize the pearl of life of some monarch-level nightmare demons." Lin Sun said, "Me too. This time, I also want to seize the star source buried here." As soon as this came out, the people around Jade Star Judy became angry and their faces darkened. "Ling Xuanzi, I didn't expect you to be such a person," someone said angrily. "Oh, what a disappointment," someone sighed. Previously, they had fought a bloody battle just to protect the stellar source buried here. They had thought that Lin Sun had come to help them, but who would have thought that the truth was completely the opposite? This made them extremely angry, and felt that they had been cheated. Lin Sun glanced at these angry guys and said, "Do you think it's not enough for me to repay a favor?" His words were casual, but Jade Star Judy's face changed. He forced a smile and said, "Brother Ling, don't get me wrong. We will leave now." After saying that, he left with those people regardless of anything else. Until they disappeared, Lin Sun withdrew his gaze and sneered in his heart. Did these guys really think that he was willing to help others? Ridiculous. In fact, from the moment Mutian, Mad Confucian Emperor Ning Daoji and Jade Star Ju Di deliberately alienated him in the starting city, Lin Sun had never regarded them as a fellow traveler. Lin Sun didn't blame them for doing this. After all, they didn't have any real friendship. And now, what Lin Sun did was also based on this foundation. They didn't have any friendship, but they still resented him for stealing the star source? Weren't they afraid that he would kill them in anger? If Jade Star Ju Di hadn't decisively left with these people at the last moment, Lin Sun would have taught them a lesson. Shaking his head, Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Boom! Not far away, the black mountain full of vitality collapsed, and a colorful star source flew out and was caught by Lin Sun. After looking at it for a while, Lin Sun put away the star source and floated away. At the same time, Miss, we were the first to discover that stellar source, but it was taken away by Ling Xuanzi in the end. That fellow is simply too detestable. Far away in the void, a person shouted angrily. Yes, we thought that he was helping us out of kindness. Who would have thought that his face would be so ugly and hideous? The others also chimed in. Shut up. The Jade Star Ju Di could no longer control his anger. First, we drew the line between us and Ling Xuanzi. Secondly, if not for Ling Xuanzi's interference, not only would the stellar source have been snatched away, we would not have been able to escape unscathed as well. Thirdly, Ling Xuanzi taking the initiative to appear and help us resolve this conflict is already equivalent to helping us. At this point, everyone went silent like cicadas in winter. You don't know how to be grateful. You should at least know what's good and what's bad. What right do you have to be angry? Everyone's expression alternated between green and white. The Jade Star Absolute Emperor let out a long sigh. He was filled with regret. Searching for astrals in Sector 6 the second day. While Lin Sun was seizing a astral source, he was besieged by a large group of people. 3 groups attacked him at the same time. The first group was led by a white-haired young man. He was an extremely powerful 7th-level Great Emperor, and his name was Wu Tianqian. He was surrounded by 3 9th-level ancestors and a group of emperors. The first group was led by an old Taoist in a red robe. This old Taoist was not Great Emperor Juing, but his cultivation of the 9th realm martial ancestor had reached the peak realm, and he had mastered many terrifying secret techniques. He was even more powerful than Wen Xiaoheng's Granny Shui. The third group, it was a group of familiar faces. It was Mad Confucian Emperor and his people. When they attacked, Mad Confucian Emperor and the people around him did not show any emotion. They saw Lin Sun as an opponent and attacked him with all their strength. Lin Sun was not angry, nor did he show any signs of abnormality. In the end, Lin Sun chose to retreat. But he did not leave. He stood in the distance and watched coldly. This made the 3 groups feel uncomfortable. The situation fell into a strange standoff. Lin Sun's existence was a threat, and for the 3 groups of forces, no one was willing to give up the stellar source buried nearby. But if they fought with each other, Lin Sun would take the opportunity to take advantage of them. For a time, the situation was in a stalemate. Lin Sun was calm, but the faces of the 3 groups were a little gloomy. Everyone knew that the longer it dragged on, more and more competitors would come from all directions. At that time, the situation would only be more chaotic. Brother Ling, we are on the same side. If you help us get this astral source this time, we will help you next time. Mad Confucian Emperor suddenly said with a sincere look. Lin Sun showed a sneer. You drew a line with me in the starting city before. Why did you change your mind now? After a pause, Lin Sun continued, When we fought before, I didn't see you on the same side. Mad Confucian Emperor's expression stiffened, and he sighed softly. Times have changed. Lin Sun looked at the leaders of the other 2 groups and said, If you join hands to kill this despicable guy, I will leave immediately and promise that I will never get involved in this matter again. His words made the white-haired boy and the red-robed Taoist very excited. Mad Confucian Emperor's face changed. Brother Ling, you want to kill us with a borrowed knife. Is there a problem? Lin Sun laughed. Remember, we are not friends, nor are we on the same side. We are enemies. Of course, we have to deal with enemies by all means. Mad Confucian Emperor's face suddenly became gloomy, and his eyes were bursting with hatred. Ling Xuanzi, why don't you join hands with us to kill these guys first, and then you can leave? Isn't it perfect? The white-haired boy suddenly made a suggestion. Yes, yes. The red-robed Taoist also nodded in agreement. Of course, this is excellent. Lin Sun smiled brightly. The hearts of Mad Confucian Emperor and the others sank to the bottom, and they were both shocked and angry. Before, it was the situation where 3 groups of people besieged Lin Sun, but now they were regarded as the target. You too, do you really believe Ling Xuanzi's nonsense? Mad Confucian Emperor shouted, his face livid. The white-haired boy said indifferently, It doesn't matter. What matters is that we can have one less opponent, which is a good thing for us. Attack! The red-robed Taoist shouted and led a group of emperors to attack. Lin Sun did not hold back. He cooperated with Mad Confucian Emperor and the others at the first time. Go! Mad Confucian Emperor let out an angry roar and fled with a group of people, not daring to fight at all. You too, the next battle depends on you too. And Lin Sun did not disappoint. With a laugh, he moved the void and chased after Mad Confucian Emperor and the others. The white-haired boy and the red-robed Taoist both breathed a sigh of relief. In the blink of an eye, Lin Sun, Mad Confucian Emperor and the others all left, which meant that the situation suddenly became clear. As if they had a tacit understanding, the white-haired boy and the red-robed Taoist looked at each other and then attacked at the same time. Boom! The 2 of them led the experts of their respective camps and started a fierce battle here. Far away in the sky, Lin Sun was chasing after Mad Confucian Emperor and the others at an extremely fast speed. Puff, puff, puff. One by one, flowers of blood burst out, scarlet and hot. Next to Mad Confucian Emperor, the emperors were killed one after another, their lives wiped out like weeds. This made Mad Confucian Emperor almost go crazy and he roared, Ling Xuanzi, are you really going to kill us all? His eyes were bloodshot. Did you show mercy when you and those guys besieged me before? Lin Sun's expression was neither sad nor happy. That's nothing more than fighting for the stellar source. What about you? You've already given up on the stellar source, why are you still so ruthless? When Mad Confucian Emperor roared, another emperor beside him was killed. The blood splashed in front of his eyes, making him tremble all over and his eyes turn red. Do you really think that I gave up that stellar source? Lin Sun's eyes were filled with pity. Mad Confucian Emperor was stunned. At this moment, Lin Sun rushed out and the abyssal sword cauldron crushed down. Boom! An earth-shattering battle was staged, and the entire area was in chaos. Although Mad Confucian Emperor was strong, he was no match for Lin Sun. In just a moment, he was swept by the abyssal sword, and his body was divided into 2 parts. He was obliterated in the torrent of sword chi and disappeared. Even at death's door, he was deeply unwilling. He didn't understand why Lin Sun was so decisive and ruthless. Anyone who regards me as an enemy should be eliminated. Lin Sun's black eyes were deep and calm. He turned around and went back the way he came. The reason why he spent so much effort was to fight for a chance to defeat them one by one. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to fight against the joint forces of the white-haired boy, the red-robed old Taoist, and Mad Confucian Emperor. Now, Mad Confucian Emperor and his party had been eliminated. Next, it was time to deal with the white-haired boy and the red-robed old Taoist. To Lin Sun's surprise, when he returned, the white-haired boy and the red-robed old Taoist were already in a fierce battle, and both sides had suffered heavy casualties. Seeing this, Lin Sun almost laughed out loud. When the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. The ancients were right. Ling Xuanzi. In the battle, when he saw Lin Sun's figure reappear, the white-haired boy's face suddenly changed. Why are you back again? Damn it! The red-robed old Taoist obviously understood, and his face was extremely gloomy. We were fooled by this bastard. Lin soon stepped in the air, his robe fluttering like an otherworldly immortal. There was still a bright smile on his handsome face. You two continue. It's best if both of you are injured and destroyed. In this way I can get a big bargain without any effort. Chapter 2543. Lin Sun's words were full of sarcasm, like an invisible slap on the faces of the white-haired boy and the red-robed old Taoist. They were so angry that their faces turned livid. Their killing intent surged and they were about to go crazy. They were fooled. Before, they were quite satisfied with Lin Sun's behavior of leaving as he promised. They never thought that all this was fake. The most depressing thing was that the two camps had suffered heavy casualties since the beginning of the battle. Both of them were truly enraged. But at this time, Lin Sun came back, looking at Lin Sun's bright smile. They couldn't wait to smash him and eat him alive. It's getting late. It's time to send you two to hell. Lin Sun clapped his hands and said slowly. With a bang, the abyssal sword cauldron struck horizontally with great power as if to suppress the whole area. The white-haired boy's face changed and he roared. With dazzling purple brilliance all over his body, he swung the bronze stick in his hand and smashed it hard. At this moment, the red-robed old Taoist retreated and intended to escape. Obviously, even though he was angry, he didn't lose his mind. He realized that the situation was not good and didn't intend to fight recklessly. But how could Lin Sun let him go? 5 doppelgangers rushed out and besieged the red-robed old Taoist together. The battle broke out without any suspense, and the whole world was blown up. Unlike before, the white-haired boy and the red-robed old Taoist had suffered heavy casualties, and even they were injured. Under such circumstances, how could they be Lin Sun's opponent? In a moment, with an angry and mournful scream, the red-robed old Taoist was directly killed by the 5 doppelgangers. His spirit didn't have time to escape. It exploded together with his body and soul. The white-haired boy saw that the situation was not good. It was too late for him to escape. He was besieged by Lin Sun and the 5 doppelgangers. Such attacks were simply like a violent storm that covered the surroundings, and they didn't give the white-haired young man the slightest chance to catch his breath. In the end, he was killed on the spot. As for the other emperors in the field, they were even worse. They were slaughtered by Lin Sun. Previously, he was the first to discover this stellar source, but he was besieged by the white-haired young man, the red-robed old Taoist, and the reckless Confucian emperor. Now, this resentment had finally been vented. Soon, Lin Sun put away the stellar source buried here. Without delay, he directly teleported into the void and disappeared. Then, Lin Sun walked in the 6th zone for another 2 days. Just as he was about to leave for District 7, he was surprised to hear that when Xiaoheng had left District 6 a few days ago. Lin Sun couldn't help frowning when he heard the news. How is this possible? There's still half a month before the end of the trial. How could Wen Xiaoheng leave in advance? It must be Heng Dianshuo's special care. Lin vaguely felt that Wen Xiaoheng's departure was definitely related to Heng Dianshuo. After a long time, Lin Sun shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He had a hunch that even if Wen Xiaoheng left now, he would most likely stay in Starting City until he confirmed that he had died in District 9. What he needed to do now was to walk out of the 9th district alive. On the 15th day after entering the trial world, Lin Sun entered District 7. He began to concentrate on collecting stellar source. Of course, the more the better, so that he could exchange for enough underworld pearl. With enough underworld pearls, he could completely condense the 9 netherworld Tao patterns. District 7 was a different scene. There was an inexplicable cold air flowing between heaven and earth, which made people palpitate and became more and more oppressive and terrible. Calamities occurred frequently here. Storms that seemed like world annihilation raged about, and even space was crushed to the point of shattering, causing enormous cracks to appear like spiderwebs. Colorful streamers shuttled under the sky, shining with a dangerous luster that was enough to make emperors tremble. Occasionally, the chanting of scriptures could be heard. It was ethereal, but full of a strange demonic power, which could quietly disturb people's state of mind and make them lose control of their Taoist heart. Not to mention ordinary emperors, even Lin Sun himself was awed by the strange disaster scenes and became more vigilant and alert. Along the way, he was almost killed several times, all of which were related to those strange disasters. They came suddenly, mysteriously, and terrifyingly, revealing a fatal threat that was impossible to guard against. These dangerous experiences also made Lin Sun break out in a cold sweat. This was just District 7, but it was already so terrible. What would it be like in District 8? How terrible would District 9 be? The aura on the ID card still led him to the front. This made Lin Sun more certain that what was waiting for him must be District 9. Hung Tian Shua. It was the first time that Lin Sun hated a person so much since he entered the vast thousand battlefield. Pushing himself into a dangerous place that no one had been able to get out of alive since ancient times, such means were undoubtedly too despicable and vicious. Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that there was a wave of vitality in front of him, which indicated that there was a stellar source buried somewhere ahead. However, Lin Sun was used to it. This was the 9th astral source that he had found since he entered Division 7. Although District 7 was extremely dangerous, the number of stellar source buried here was quite amazing, far more than the first 6 areas, and each of them was first class. Without hesitation, Lin Sun jumped forward. There was a huge ravine in front of him, like a sinkhole, and the wave of vitality emerged from the bottom of the ravine. Lin Sun stood in the void and looked at it for a moment. Then he suddenly stretched out his palm and grabbed at the bottom of the ravine. Boom! The earth rumbled and collapsed like a piece of paper. Then, a stream of black Taoist light flashed out and avoided Lin Sun's big hand. The black light condensed into a rui in the void, shining brightly. The flowing light rain condensed into thousands of flower buds, blooming layer by layer, which was very spectacular. Lin Sun's eyes suddenly lit up and he was excited. Stellar Source Weapon, Psychic Law. It was a rare and complete stellar source of extraordinary quality, similar to the one Lin Sun got for the first time. Without hesitation, Lin Sun activated Abyssal Sword Cauldron and directly suppressed the Black Rui. Whoosh! The Black Rui kept dodging at an extremely fast speed, which seemed to be full of intelligence. But how could it resist Lin Sun's attack? It was suppressed in an instant. However, just as Lin Sun suppressed the treasure, boom! A white dazzling sword chi suddenly slashed from the distant sky, like the Milky Way flowing backwards, crushing the sky and cutting open the void with a terrifying momentum. Lin Sun raised his brows and his sleeves fluttered, easily wiping away the sword chi that slashed over and dissipating into the void. Ling Xuanzi, hand over that stellar source. Otherwise, you're destined to not be able to leave here alive. A cold voice sounded. A black-robed man stepped on a dazzling Taoist sword and tore through the sky. His clothes fluttered in the wind and his eyes were cold, as if he was looking down from above. Lin Sun recognized him. Back in Starting City, Feng Junlin had gone to the inn and tried to make him lower his head and serve him. And this black-robed man was one of the 4 emperors who followed Feng Junlin. Robbery! Lin Sun laughed. Ever since he entered the trial world, he had experienced such things countless times. The black-robed man placed his hands behind his back and stepped on the Taoist sword. He looked aloof and said coldly, "No, you have to hand over this treasure in exchange for your life." Lin Sun gave him a slap in the face in response. Boom! A dazzling hand that covered the sky swept across the sky like the hand of the heavens. It was filled with terrifying power, causing the void to explode. The Taoist sword under the black-robed man's feet shot out to block. But amidst the dull sound, the black-robed man was slapped away like a fly. Blood spurted out from his mouth and nose, and even the void collapsed. His head buzzed and he saw stars. He was dumbfounded. He actually couldn't block the power of a slap? The black-robed man couldn't be blamed for being ignorant. After entering the trial world, they immediately crossed through the major regions and entered the 7th region. They had no idea what happened in the first 6 regions in the past few days. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to challenge Lin Sun like that. You're courting death. Do you know the consequences of doing this? The black-robed man shouted. His face was swollen and bleeding, and his face was filled with rage. That slap didn't wake you up? Lin Sun was a little surprised. Where did this black-robed man get his courage from to be so arrogant? As he spoke, he slapped the black-robed man across the air again. The black-robed man finally showed a panicked expression and chose to retreat at once. But his body was still hit by that terrifying slap. He let out a scream and flew away as if he was hit by a mountain. At this moment, the void in the distance tumbled and a group of people walked out in a line. The leader wore a purple gold crown on his head, a white jade belt around his waist, and a pair of purple vertical pupils. When he opened and closed his eyes, there was purple light flowing and wisps of Taoist light. It was Feng Junlin. He was a legendary figure from the Greatsword Mountain in the godly Rising Star region, which was ranked first in the vast thousand world. This person was handsome and mighty. His every move was in harmony with the heaven and earth. Even when he stood casually, he was majestic and domineering. There were 3 people beside Feng Junlin. When they saw the black-robed man who looked miserable, their eyes narrowed and their faces darkened. They all looked at Lin Sun. Young master. Ling Xuanzi snatched the star source that I saw first. I asked him to return it, but he still wanted to kill me. The black-robed man seemed to have found a backer. He was in high spirits and gnashed his teeth. What he said was obviously a false accusation. Lin Sun sneered and said with a mocking look, "You're lying with your eyes open. Go and ask your young master if he saw everything that happened just now." The reason why he didn't kill the black-robed man immediately before was that he sensed that there was a powerful divine sense paying attention to this world in the dark. Lin Sun didn't need to guess to know that it must be Feng Junlin. This was also the reason why Lin Sun didn't kill him. He wanted to see how long the black-robed man could hide in the dark and endure. P.S. Well, I'll continue to update tonight. Is it exciting? Chapter 2544. The man in black paused and was about to say something. Feng Junlin waved his hand and said, "He is right. I saw everything that happened. There is no need to say anything more." The man in black's face turned red and he looked embarrassed. "Ling Xuanzi, he is weaker than you. He deserves to be beaten up. But he is my man after all. How do you think we should end this?" Feng Junlin stared at Lin Sun. His figure was tall and sturdy, giving off a very domineering aura. This was definitely an expert. Moreover, he was an extremely powerful and terrifying figure that few people could compare to. "Then what do you want?" Lin Sun looked calm and at ease. "We fight on the path of cultivation." Feng Junlin's voice was firm and unquestionable. "We have to fight after all." Lin Sun nodded. "Fine." Feng Junlin shook his head. "No, you are wrong. As long as you can defeat the 4 people around me, I will let bygones be bygones." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. He could tell that the 4 people around Feng Junlin were not ordinary emperors. 2 Ninth Realm ancestors and 2 peak-level emperors. Even the man in black who was slapped by him was a peak-level 6 emperor. "What do you mean bygones?" Lin Sun smiled. "I don't want to argue with you about who is right and who is wrong. But let me be frank. What you are doing is sending these 4 to their death. Are you sure you want to do this?" Feng Junlin couldn't help but laugh out loud. His purple eyes were filled with terrifying light. "Did you hear that? Ling Xuanzi said you are going to die. Young master, leave it to us. A man in a green robe with red hair stood out. His eyes were cold. "We will let him know what it means to overestimate yourself and be arrogant and ignorant." Lin Sun glanced at him and looked at Feng Junlin again. "Why don't you come with me? Hee, let's talk about it after you defeat the four of us. But I don't think you have the chance." The other was a skinny old man in a gray robe with deep eye sockets. He spoke indifferently with a mocking smile on his face. As he spoke, the old man in a gray robe, the man in a green robe with red hair, the man in black who was slapped by Lin Sun, and a lady in green who hadn't said a word since the beginning walked out one after another. They stood in 4 different directions, as if they were abiding by a type of law that would never change since time immemorial. They looked casual, but were actually profound and unfathomable, definitely not simple individuals. At the same time, Lin Sun felt a trace of danger. None of them were as strong as Feng Junlin, but when the 4 of them moved together, they actually formed a mysterious formation, and their auras seemed to have fused into one. Vaguely, Lin Sun also felt a kind of pressure blowing on his face. A secret joint attack formation? A guess emerged in Lin Sun's mind. "Ling Xuanzi, you're dead for sure this time." The black-robed man who was slapped by Lin Sun earlier spoke ferociously with a sinister gaze. Lin Sun suddenly moved and launched a swift and fierce attack. He teleported in the air and charged towards the black-robed man. But it was another solid slap. Lin Sun's strength was so great that it was enough to turn a whole mountain range into ashes. However, the black-robed man was only sent flying. He was covered in blood, and his face was only smashed. He didn't suffer any more serious injuries. Lin Sun raised his brows. He acutely noticed that the power of his slap was dissolved by a strange force before it could truly charge into the black-robed man's body. "I'm going to kill you!" The black-robed man was so angry that he almost went mad. Half of his face had been smashed by Lin Sun earlier. Now it was like this again, causing him to be in a sorry state and lose all face. Boom! The 4 of them moved together, and each of them glowed. It was as if there was a gray lightning of the great Tao raging, causing each of them to be covered in a gray mist. At this moment, the aura, strength, cultivation, and even vitality of the 4 of them seemed to have completely condensed together. They could share their lives and merge their cultivation. The black-robed man's injuries recovered immediately. Seeing this, Feng Junlin's figure flashed, and he left the area to watch the battle from afar. Obscure and profound symbols flickered in his purple pupils. It wasn't that he looked down on Lin Sun and felt that it was beneath him to participate in the battle himself. Instead, he had another objective, and he wanted to see Lin Sun's attainments in the Great Tao. Chop! With a roar, the 4 of them attacked together. Endless Taoist light emerged, pierced through the sky, and turned into magnificent and sharp rainbows, chopping at Lin Sun. Inscribing the formation in the body, Lin Sun's eyes lit up. This was a strange formation. The 4 of them each controlled a formation treasure, which could form a constantly changing formation, which was mysterious and unpredictable. And these 4 people were not ordinary people. 2 Ninth Realm ancestors and 2 Supreme Emperors set up a formation together, which evolved a mysterious formation that could seize the creation of heaven and earth, which was extremely horrible. Boom! While thinking, Lin Sun had already made his move. He activated the Abyssal Sword Cauldron, and the Taoist light around him was overwhelming and fierce, pushing forward. However, as the battle went on, Lin Sun found that although his opponent's attacks were disintegrated one by one, his own killing power was also destroyed by them, and it seemed to be very easy. After observation, Lin Sun vaguely understood. The formation arranged by these 4 people was in the form of 4 symbols, deducing the mutual rotation of yin and yang, and the combination of hardness and softness. They cycled back and forth, like the beginning and the beginning, endlessly. No matter what kind of attack, it would be separated by the circulation force of the formation in the first time, and then resolved and borne by the four people together. In this way, the attack suffered by each person was only a quarter of the power of Lin Sun's attack. On the contrary, when the four people attacked together, their power was gathered together by the formation and integrated into one. It seemed that the four people attacked separately, but in fact, the power of the four people superimposed together, so the power was naturally terrifying. Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. What kind of formation could perfectly integrate the power of four emperors into one? It was the first time that he saw such a formation, so he couldn't underestimate it. Using people as formation flags was very different from the ordinary formation, and it was very difficult to crack. What was more, the cultivation of these four people was far beyond ordinary. When they operated the formation together, it was like a living formation fighting. Boom! The battle was still going on, and it was extremely fierce. The area was chaotic, sand and stones were flying, and the sky was turning upside down. Lin Sun did feel a kind of pressure and threat, but it was not fatal. This gave him the opportunity to observe and understand some of the mysteries of this mysterious formation during the battle. It's really interesting. In the end, Lin Sun had a lot of inspiration. Swish! Suddenly, a Taoist sword shot out from the abyssal sword cauldron, shining with immortal and peerless Taoist light. Puff! This was a peerless and sharp attack. The green-robed red-haired man couldn't dodge in time, and his chest was pierced, and blood splashed out. However, as an obscure and strange formation power appeared on his body, the four of them quickly helped him recover. This attack also made the four people aware of Lin Sun's strength. They couldn't help but become serious, and they no longer held back when killing. The world's guide, the light of four symbols. With a loud shout above their heads, a vague Taoist diagram appeared, and then the brilliance shone brightly, illuminating the 9 heavens and 10 earth. Taoist diagram. Every Taoist diagram reflected a treasure. They were respectively a Taoist sword branded with the azure dragon totem, a spear branded with the white tiger totem, a seal branded with the vermilion bird totem, and a shield branded with the black tortoise totem. These 4 completely different mysterious Taoist diagrams appeared, and they glowed brilliantly. They combined in the void, and it was like they were arranged into a world of 4 symbols that pressed down towards Lin Sun. The terrifying might caused this expanse of the heavens and the earth to fall into a scene of destruction. Lin Sun couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. No wonder the 4 of them were so confident and conceited. They actually possessed a mysterious Taoist diagram treasure together, and it wasn't as simple as a formation. It's time to end this. Lin Sun's cold eyes glowed, and the abyssal sword cauldron rushed up like a world-destroying furnace. It rumbled, and it erupted with the power to devour the heavens and obliterate all worlds. Rumble! The world shook, and the abyssal sword cauldron rumbled, oppressing the 4 symbols Tao diagram to the point of shaking violently. The 4 of them were shocked, and their bodies trembled repeatedly. Their expressions couldn't help but change. Ling Xuanzi's combat strength was too strong. What a treasure! In the distance, the eyes of Feng Junlin, who had been watching the battle, shone with a terrifying light. He was extremely moved when he sensed the terror of the abyssal sword cauldron. He couldn't imagine that there was such a miraculous and heaven-defying natal weapon in the world. And the combat strength that Lin Sun displayed was so powerful that even Feng Junlin couldn't help but be amazed. Kill him! Kill him with the utmost murderous might! The skinny old man shouted, and his body rumbled with light. Above his head, the shield branded with the black tortoise totem pressed down like a myriad of divine mountains. The other 3 did as they were told. They operated the mysterious Taoist diagram and slashed it at Lin Sun, as if they wanted to suppress all the laws in the world and cut off all traces of Tao. Boom! Lin Sun had already seen through the secret of the 4 of them joining forces, so he wouldn't hold back anymore. This time, he directly activated his cultivation and deduced the mystery of the Great Ways Furnace scripture. He was fierce and domineering, and he was the most courageous in the world. The surging Taoist light surged like a tsunami, and an unparalleled murderous intent filled the sky. It shook the clouds, as if it was going to melt and swallow the universe. A deafening explosion sounded. Although the 4 Taoist diagrams contained the cultivation of the 4 of them, they couldn't withstand Lin Sun's all-out attack. They were sent flying again and again, wailing violently. The treasures and totems that appeared on them became blurry. The 4 experts all spat out a mouthful of blood, and their bodies staggered with horror on their faces. Just how strong was the opponent's attack? Even with the strength of the 4 of them, they couldn't suppress Ling Xuanzi with the help of 4 ancient weapons. Instead, they were defeated. This was too terrifying. At this moment, Lin Sun's eyes were cold, and his aura grew stronger. Restriction of 4 symbols, kill. One of them roared, and the gray mist on their bodies appeared again. This was a strange formation power. Beams of terrifying light pierced through the sky and slashed at Lin Sun. Lin Sun activated the abyssal sword cauldron to fight back fiercely, and the rumbling sound was deafening. That kind of fighting power, any wisp of aura that overflowed could destroy a mountain. It was extremely terrifying. In just a moment, the 4 of them all coughed up blood, and they were seriously injured. Their faces were pale. In the distance, Feng Junlin couldn't stay calm anymore. P.S. Updated and sent to you. Chapter 2545. Feng Junlin was an absolutely conceited person. He wasn't afraid of Wen Shaoheng, who was an immortal emperor. Otherwise, he wouldn't have meddled in Lin Sun's business and tried to recruit Lin Sun. Originally, he had overestimated Lin Sun's potential. But after witnessing Lin Sun's power, he was shocked to find out one thing. On the peerless path of cultivation, even though Lin Sun was only in the 6th level of Emperor realm, his combat capability was so powerful that he could threaten those who were even more powerful than him. It was unbelievable. The boundless world was so vast that it included billions of worlds. Even though there were only a few emperors in each world, there was still a huge number of them when they were gathered together. Unlike other emperors, Great Emperor Zhu Yun was extremely rare as a phoenix feather or a unicorn horn. In the Great Thousand World, only the top 50 starry sky planes could see many peerless great emperors. In other worlds, there might be peerless emperors, but most of them had broken their path of cultivation. What surprised Feng Junlin was that the ancient path Lin Sun came from had been in decline for a long time. There hadn't been any peerless emperors in a long time. The scariest thing was that the peerless path Lin Sun walked on was so powerful that it could even be called terrifying among the peerless figures. At least, before this, Feng Junlin couldn't imagine how a peerless emperor in the 6th level could have such power. This almost refreshed his knowledge. There must be a big secret on this guy. Feng Junlin's eyes flashed as he made a judgment. Boom! Terrifying collisions sounded. On the battlefield, Lin Sun was full of killing intent. Light gushed out from his body and destroyed all kinds of attack. Even though the 4 of them tried their best to resist and fight back, they were still suppressed by Lin Sun. They suffered a lot. They were shaken several times and coughed up blood. Boom! Lin Sun waved his fist. Wind and thunder roared, mountains and rivers lost their colors, and the sun and moon lost their light. He punched through one of them and broke all his bones. Half of his body collapsed. Puff, puff. The other 3 spat out blood and flew out. The diagrams in their hands buzzed and dimmed. Everyone's face was pale and full of disbelief. That's enough. In the distance, Feng Junlin's voice resounded in the whole area. Who would have thought that Lin Sun didn't care at all and reached out his hand? There was a loud boom. The 4 symbols Dao diagram that was held by the 4 people immediately flew out of their hands and into Lin Sun's grasp. Stop! Feng Junlin made his move. His huge hand covered the sky and pressed down fiercely, trying to stop Lin Sun from snatching the treasure. Without even looking at it, Lin Sun punched out fiercely like a great abyss swallowing the sky, crushing and obliterating the big hand. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Sun flashed out of the field and said calmly, "It's kind enough that I didn't kill them. As compensation, these 4 treasures belong to me." With that, Lin Sun stored the 4 Tao diagrams into the abyssal sword cauldron. Feng Junlin's face was gloomy. His eyes were like purple lightning, extremely terrifying. He said, "You want the treasure? Sure, as long as you can block my attack." He wore a violet gold crown on his head and a white jade belt around his waist. He seemed extraordinary and enshrouded in the light of the Tao. 2 sharp violet divine lights shot out from his eyes as he blinked. Boom! He reached out his fair and slender palm and cut across the void. Instantly, purple lightning poured down from the sky like a flood. The purple light was boiling and the lightning was violent like a thunderstorm. It drowned Lin Sun like a vast ocean. A great battle broke out in an instant. With just one strike, Lin Sun realized how terrifying Feng Junlin was. He was indeed not an ordinary character. That level of Taoism and power was unprecedented. Lin Sun didn't dare to be careless. He attacked with all his strength. His palm and fingers were like lightning, displaying the mystery of the unification of 10,000 swords. Boom! The purple thunderstorm ocean was cut into 2 halves by the sword. It was like a sword splitting the ocean. The wheel of the world, emptiness. With a low and majestic voice, Feng Junlin's pupils became the source of the purple light. His whole body was majestic and tall as he stood in the sky. A purple wheel condensed. On it, the scene of the wheel of the world changing and the destruction of the void appeared. It suddenly slashed out. The rumbling sound lingered on, and the world was dyed into a deep and strange purple color. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed to be caught in the mighty torrent of the world changing. He was attacked by a terrifying power of disillusionment, and it seemed to drown him and make him fall into oblivion. The power of time? No. This is the power of disillusionment. It's the power of disillusionment. Lin Sun couldn't help showing a solemn expression. Time was a supreme and mysterious great way. Although Feng Junlin hadn't touched this great way, he had transformed the vicissitudes of the world and the destruction of time with his own power of great way. This showed how terrifying his attainments in Taoism were. Lin Sun didn't dare to neglect it. Boom! He released all the power in his body. It was like a great abyss crossing the sky and a great furnace suppressing the world. He deduced his strongest Tao, which was like an abyss and a prison, and it swept across all directions. The purple wheel exploded instantly, and it also allowed Lin Sun to escape from the mysterious power of the vicissitudes of the world and the destruction of time. Then, accompanied by a shocking roar, Lin Sun rushed up and became a great abyss that could devour all directions as he attacked Feng Junlin. In an instant, hundreds of unparalleled battles took place. The 2 attacked extremely quickly, and in the blink of an eye, they had exchanged hundreds of blows. The surrounding mountains and rivers were all swept by the killing power of the 2. The heaven and earth wailed, and the scene of doomsday appeared everywhere. In the battle, Lin Sun often felt like he was falling into the vicissitudes of the world and the destruction of time, and it constantly attacked his strength and state of mind. Although this wasn't the power of time, it could also be called strange and abnormal. It was soundless and could make people fall into it unknowingly. Even Lin Sun had to admit that a peak 8th-level emperor like Feng Junlin was indeed terrifying. He had a strong foundation and controlled extraordinary power, and it was far from what the ancestors of the 9th realm could compare with. In fact, in this vast world and countless planes of the universe, every peak great emperor who could possess the power to suppress the world must have gone through the baptism of endless hardships and conquest. Feng Junlin, for example, was the strongest opponent Lin Sun had met since he set foot in the boundless 1,000 battlefield. He was mighty and brave. When he attacked, all kinds of divine lights danced in the air. They were all wonderful skills, and any one of them could make immortals weep. It was extremely powerful. Boom! A Taoist sword suddenly appeared in front of Feng Junlin. The sword chi was tens of thousands of meters long, like a mountain range, like a cluster of stars, dazzling. A murderous aura that seemed to come from the ancient times spread out from this Taoist sword, as if a god had been resurrected. This was Feng Junlin's real killing method, and it was also the origin of his title, Peerless Overlord Sword. Overlord Sword. These two words were enough to explain everything. Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank. On this sword, there was an immortal aura that was extremely fierce. Kill! Feng Junlin shouted lightly. The Taoist sword carried the power to cut down the sun, moon, and stars, and it slashed down furiously, destroying the universe. Buzz! Lin Sun let out a long roar, and the abyssal sword cauldron glowed. Its momentum was like it was burning, and it swept thousands of miles away, like a tsunami rolling up the sky. Lin Sun, who was controlling the abyssal sword cauldron, was like a demon god in the world. Bang! 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 The immortal Taoist sword and the abyssal sword cauldron clashed, producing earth-shattering destructive power. This was a shocking battle. The Taoist sword clanged, and the abyssal sword cauldron roared. Lin Sun and Feng Junlin turned into two streaks of lightning, entangling with each other, fighting fiercely between the 9 heavens and 10 earths. In a flash, hundreds of rounds had passed. Nowadays, there were very few people who could fight with Lin Sun for more than 100 rounds. But now, Feng Junlin could actually fight against Lin Sun, which was really a rare tyrannical existence. In the end, Lin Sun also became angry. His fighting spirit was boiling, and his fighting spirit was burning. He performed the battle saint technique, fighting the strong with the strong, and using violence to curb violence. This could be said to be an unprecedented battle. The two fought until the stars lost their color, and the sun and moon lost their light. The black-robed man and the other 3 had already retreated far away. They were dazzled, shocked, and couldn't calm down. Since they started cultivating, it was the first time they saw someone who could fight against Feng Junlin. The most unbelievable thing was that Feng Junlin was only at the peak of the 6th level of the Emperor realm. Boom! After another unprecedented battle, the figures of the two shot back, and a long distance was drawn between them. The light around Lin Sun's body seethed, and it shot into the heavens and the earth. The abyssal sword cauldron splashed a myriad of lights, making him look like an ancient demon god that looked down upon the heavens. On the opposite side, Feng Junlin wore a purple-gold crown, and his figure was imposing. A Taoist sword floated in front of him, and it flowed with an immortal murderous aura. His expression was gloomy, and purple light surged in his eyes. He suddenly said, "Forget it, let's stop here. Since you like those 4 treasures, I'll lend them to you for a few days. We'll fight next time." Clang! He opened his mouth, and the immortal Taoist sword in front of him turned into a stream of light and disappeared into his body. After that, he turned around and left. His expression was calm, and no one knew what he was thinking. The black-robed man and the other 3 were stunned, and they didn't know what he was thinking. Because Feng Junlin hadn't shown any sign of defeat since the beginning of the battle, and he still had many trump cards that he hadn't used yet. But now, he took the initiative to give up. Lin Sun's pupils were deep. He glanced around and vaguely understood something. He put away the abyssal sword cauldron and was about to leave. Suddenly, Feng Junlin's voice came from afar. "What I said in the inn is still the same. As long as you choose to follow me, I promise I won't let you die in the 9th district." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Obviously, Feng Junlin had already seen through Heng Tianshua's arrangement, and he knew the danger Lin Sun would face. "I'll also give you a chance the next time we meet," Lin Sun said. "What chance?" Feng Junlin turned around and asked in the distance. "The chance to submit to me," Lin Sun said casually. Feng Junlin was stunned at first, and then he laughed to the sky. He strode away in the sky. The black-robed man and the others hurried to follow him. As soon as they left, a round of applause and praises sounded between heaven and earth. With the strength at the peak of the 6th level of the Emperor realm, he can fight equally with Feng Junlin, who is at the peak of the 8th level of the Emperor realm. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, who would believe that there is such a person in the world? In the void far away, a huge green calabash emerged, and the air of chaos was pervading. A man in a Taoist robe stood on it. He was handsome, tall and straight, and had an incomparable demeanor. Emperor Zhu Lu Yuduchio. Chapter 2546. It's hard to find such a character in the boundless world, but you can find some in the eternal world. A clear and cold voice rang out as soon as Yuduchio appeared. A faint golden rain of light drifted down, condensing into a divine rainbow that was paved with lotus flowers, and a graceful figure stood on it. Her skin was smooth and her body was bathed in the light golden light. She looked like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. On her back was a pair of sabers, one green and one purple. The sabers gave off a frightening murderous aura, which added to her fierceness. "You're right, Fairy Xiaoyuan." Yuduchio smiled. He was very respectful to the woman. Lin Sun finally realized who the woman was. Xiang Xiaoyuan. She was an 8th heaven monarch and was known as the Purple-Green Saber Monarch. It was said that she had only cultivated for 3,000 years, but she had already risen to power. She made countless old antiques feel inferior and suppressed the older generation. She was born with the 9 profound Taoist body. She was so talented that she was said to have dominated the Emperor Tao for 3,000 years. Like Yuduchio and Feng Junlin, Xiang Xiaoyuan also came from the mystical rising starfield, which was ranked first in the boundless world. Her background was mysterious and extraordinary. It was said that her mother was from an immortal family that controlled the heavenly order in the eternal world. Xiang Xiaoyuan's existence attracted a lot of attention and discussion among the emperors who were participating in the trial. Only Xianyan, alone with all the beauties, monopolizing the charming little garden. This woman had a unique, legendary aura about her. Thinking of this, Lin Sun said casually, "You don't come here to chat, do you?" Yuduchio and Xiang Xiaoyuan had already appeared when Lin Sun was fighting with Feng Junlin. That was why Feng Junlin suddenly stopped and ended the battle. Of course not. Yuduchio stood on the gourd and said with a smile, "Let's put it this way. There is an extremely dangerous trial in the 9th pass of the immortal realm. If there is a chance, Fairy Xiaoyuan and I hope that you can join us and work together." At the side, Xiang Xiaoyuan nodded. Her voice was clear and melodious like the sound of nature. Although that training is dangerous, it contains great fortune that is difficult to seek in the outside world. I believe that with our strength, we will definitely be able to turn misfortune into fortune and obtain the fortune within. Lin Sun was in a daze. He never thought that they came for this. "With all due respect, why me instead of Feng Junlin?" asked Lin Sun. Yuduchio smiled and said, "Feng Junlin's situation is very special. I can only say that he and we are not the same kind of people. It is impossible for us to work together." Lin Sun said with interest, "Don't you know that my current situation is very delicate?" Yuduchio and Xiang Xiaoyuan were stunned. "It's very likely that I'll have to enter the 9th region in order to leave this trial ground," Lin Sun said casually. His words made Yuduchio and Xiang Xiaoyuan's eyes narrow. They looked at each other and understood how delicate Lin Sun's situation was. "Of course, if I have the chance to go to the 9th pass of the immortal realm in the future, I don't mind going with you too. But now I have to leave." After saying that, Lin Sun flew away. Yuduchio was stunned. After a while, he frowned and said, "That Wen Xiaoheng is too cruel. Without Hing Tianshua's help, how could Ling Xuanzi fall into such a hopeless situation?" "What?" Xiang Xiaoyuan said. In my opinion, we may have to find someone else. Uduchu forced a smile. He heaved a long sigh and said, "Existences like you and I are very rare. Finding a suitable one is not easy." Xiang Xiaoyuan said, "There are quite a large number of ruthless people from eternal true world gathered in the 9th imperishable barrier. All of them came for that chance. If it's just the two of us, it'll be very difficult for us to fight against those people who can be considered monsters." She paused for a moment, then looked in the direction Lin Sun left and said, "I do hope that Ling Xuanzi can live. I can already see that he's not far from breaking through. I can imagine how terrifying his combat strength will be when he steps into the 7th level of the Emperor realm. He could fight against Feng Junlin when he was in the 6th level of the Emperor realm. If he broke through, would Feng Junlin be able to fight against him?" Uducho couldn't help but have a strange look on his face. He shook his head after a while. The 9th region was extremely dangerous. No one had ever walked out of it. There was almost no hope for Ling Xuanzi to survive. An hour later, Lin Sun went deep underground and carved out a cave. After setting up restrictions, he sat down cross-legged to recover his strength. At the same time, he started to check what he got. A perfect and rare stellar source that could be turned into a black Rui scepter was now suppressed in the abyssal sword cauldron. After sensing it carefully, Lin swallowed the stellar source into his body. In an instant, a complete mystery of the Great Way fused into his imperial realm like a rain of light. Just like the emergence gold Dao, this great Dao law called dark space was similarly extremely rare, profound, and complete. There was utterly no need for Lin Sun to condense and comprehend it before he could utilize it. For any Realm 9 ancestors, obtaining such a complete Great Way was absolutely no different from obtaining a supreme fortune. They could all break through to the first Dao ancestor realm. But for now, it wasn't very useful to Lin Sun. It only became a kind of accumulation of Great Way. It could play a key role when he became an ancestor in the future. After refining the dark space, Lin Sun took out the 4 Dao diagrams. The 4 treasures each had their own wonders. They were taken from Feng Junlin's 4 followers. Lin Sun looked at them for a moment and saw through all their mysteries. The 4 Dao diagrams were called the 4 symbol soldier realms. They were respectively the green dragon sword totem, the white tiger battle spear totem, the fire seal of the vermilion bird totem, and the black tortoise battle shield totem. The 4 totems were condensed by an obscure forbidden formation. They contained the congenital essence of the green dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise respectively. The most miraculous part was that the 4-symbol world weaponsmith world was branded with a corresponding battle inheritance, and it was called World Guide. It was a terrifying forbidden technique that could fuse the strength of 4 experts together to erupt with unprecedented might. When Lin Sun fought with the 4 people before, he had experienced the terror of the attraction of all world. It was indeed extraordinarily terrifying. The only drawback was that the 4-symbol soldier realms needed to be controlled by 4 strong people together in order to exert its full power. But for Lin Sun, this was not a problem at all. He only needed to let the 4 doppelgangers operate the treasure together. After looking at it for a long time, Lin Sun personally refined the 4-symbol soldier realms again and branded his own willpower in it. At this point, Lin Sun put away the 4-symbol soldier realms. Until his physical strength was completely restored, Lin Sun walked out of the underground cave and continued to search for Star Source. Time passed day by day. Unconsciously, there were only 3 days left before the end of the trial. At this time, Lin Sun had already left the 7th zone and walked in the 8th zone for many days. Compared with the 7th zone, the 8th zone was not terrible, but the world was full of a terrible pressure. Walking in it was like wearing a shackle heavier than a holy mountain. Those under the 6th level of the Emperor realm could not bear the pressure at all. Few cultivators could be seen in the 8th district. Moreover, the distribution of star source in this world was far less than that in the 7th zone. It was extremely rare. After searching for many days, Lin Sun only found 4 star source in total. It's time to go to the 9th zone. It was also on this day that Lin Sun made a decision. I'm going to the 9th zone. Do you want to go with me? Lin Sun asked the green sparrow. The green sparrow hiding in the sachet said in a resentful voice, Miss asked me to show you the way. There is no reason to retreat at this time. If you don't want to, you can stay. Lin Sun said seriously, after all, I don't know what terrible dangers there are in that place. The green sparrow was silent for a long time. Suddenly, she flew into a rage and said, Do you think I'm the kind of coward who can be scared away at will? Don't talk nonsense. This time, I will go with you even if you don't agree. Lin Sun looked up to the sky and sighed. It seems that I have to get out of the 9th zone alive anyway. Otherwise, won't I implicate you? After saying that, he couldn't help laughing and started to move. There was no fear in this trip, but it was necessary to be cautious and vigilant. When he passed through the barrier between the 8th zone and the 9th zone, a vast universe appeared in his sight in an instant. Lin Sun couldn't help being stunned. Universe? This was completely different from the first 7 zones. From ancient times to the present, it was called the universe. The vast universe included the boundless starry sky. Before Lin Sun arrived at the Kiliakosm battlefield, he had trekked along the ancient starry road and passed through countless universes and planes. He had been accustomed to it for a long time, but he still didn't expect that the 9th zone was located in a universe. Lin Sun looked around and sensed calmly. To his surprise, there was no trace of danger in the nearby area. Everything seemed very normal, except that there was no vitality. Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed something. He flashed and came to an ancient star thousands of miles away. This was a withered star, extremely vast and crisscrossed with ravines. What attracted Lin Sun's attention was a stone tablet seriously eroded by wind and sand. It should have been engraved with words, but now he could only recognize a few of them. The sages who died here left their last words that no one who entered this place could live for more than 24 hours. She came with the light of destruction, covering the universe. Sure enough, it's a power that doesn't belong to this era. There were only a few lines, all of which were incomplete, mottled, and messy. But the despair, frustration, panic, and confusion revealed in those words still made people's hearts palpitate even after countless years. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed slightly. Couldn't live for more than 24 hours. Who was this, she? A power that didn't belong to this era. Could it be that this, she, came from the last era? P.S. I've been updating for 3 days in a row. Let's take a break today. Chapter 2547. Lin Sun gasped. A bold conjecture emerged in his mind. All the practitioners who had entered this place since ancient times, whether they were immortals or existences at other levels, were probably killed by her. And this her was very likely to come from the last era. Now, Lin Sun had already learned a lot about the last era. According to Cyan Sparrow, the last era, known as immortal martial arts, had been destroyed for many years. The current Lin Wu era had existed for 9 million years. In the realm of the dead, there were the Great Way ancestral roots of the last era scattered. In the Sunluo underworld, Lin Sun had entered the Nirvana order and obtained many fortunes related to the last era. Like the Soul Hunter doctrine, like the 10 Directions Yama doctrine, like the Purgatory doctrine, they were all the rules of the Great Way of the Netherworld of the last era. In addition, in the world of Nirvana order, there was a Netherworld mansion, including the 6 paths, the Pool of Reincarnation, the Nether Palace, the Road to the Underworld, the Bridge of Helplessness, the Gate of Hell, the 18 Purgatories, and so on. This made Lin Sun suspect that it was very likely to be the power of the Netherworld mansion. In addition, Lin Sun had obtained 2 secret stones, One was carved with sharpness and the other was carved with nourishing the heart like jade. The owner of the whetstone once laughed loudly. Seek the sword in the Tao, compete for reincarnation, and walk in the changing of eras. This made Lin soon suspect that the owner of the whetstone must be a legendary supreme swordsman who had walked in the changing of eras, entered the ruins of wonderful Tao, and carried out the nirvana reincarnation. According to Cyan Sparrow, when one peeped into the eternal essence and comprehended the law of fate, he could stand above all Tao, look down at the changing of eras, and have insight into the secret of the changing of eras. All this made Lin soon have a vague understanding of the last era, which seemed more and more mysterious and ethereal. But there was no doubt that if she came from the last era, she was absolutely extraordinarily terrifying. After all, the last era had been destroyed. Everything had disappeared. And if she really existed, what kind of terrifying cultivation did he have to be able to survive the destruction of an era? Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. He did not notice that a pair of eyes had appeared in the void behind him. The pupils were surrounded by a rain of light. They seemed illusory, strange, and terrifying. He just stared at Lin's back in silence. However, as if sensing something, the pair of strange eyes quietly closed and disappeared. At this moment, Lin Sun turned around. He scanned his surroundings and vaguely sensed something. Boom! Suddenly, Lin Sun stretched out his hand and grasped. The earth cracked and smoke and dust filled the air. A black streamer was caught and fell into Lin Sun's hand. This was a mottled and ancient copper lamp. Its spirituality had vanished a long time ago, and the Tao markings branded on it were severely corroded, causing it to be completely worthless. But when Lin Sun looked at it, he was surprised to find that this ancient copper lamp was made of immortal matter. Obviously, this copper lamp was probably an eternal Tao treasure in the beginning. The green sparrow suddenly rushed out and opened its mouth to swallow the copper lamp, but it pounced on nothing. The treasure had already been put away by Lin Sun. "You want to eat this too?" Lin Sun said angrily. The green sparrow's eyes were filled with resentment as she said angrily, "What do you know? Refining the undying substance has immeasurable benefits for my cultivation." Saying this, she simply said, "Just tell me if you will give it to me or not." Lin Sun said, "Yes, but this is the last one. If you want this kind of treasure in the future, you must come up with some conditions that can satisfy me." The green sparrow agreed without hesitation. Lin Sun immediately threw the old copper lamp to Cyan Sparrow. Cyan Sparrow ate it up with a series of crunching sounds as if she was eating a snack. The green sparrow burped, smacked her lips, and said, "The danger in the 9th district should be related to her. If we kill her, we may be able to leave smoothly. Since ancient times, I don't know how many immortal figures have died here. I'm afraid it's not easy to achieve this step." Lin Sun's eyes were full of deep caution. Next, without delay, he began to walk in this silent universe. Along the way, there was no sound. It was cold, empty, and lifeless. It seemed that he was the only one left in the vast universe, which made people feel lonely and depressed. Along the way, although Lin Sun was extremely vigilant and defended himself with the abyssal sword cauldron at all times, neither he nor the green sparrow noticed that a pair of strange eyes would appear behind them from time to time. The eyes were illusory, strange, and silent. Whoosh! Before long, Lin Sun rushed to a barren star. With a wave of his sleeve, the thick dust on the ground was immediately lifted up. At the same time, a black spear tip was exposed. Lin Sun reached out and grabbed it in his hand. After looking at it for a while, he found that the black spear tip was made of the undying substance, just like the ancient copper lamp before. The green sparrow suddenly became restless and cried, "Why is there another one?" Lin Sun put it away at once. With his black eyes shining, he said, "Since ancient times, many immortal figures have died here. Only the treasures made of the undying substance can withstand the erosion of time and survive until now. So, as long as we continue to search, we can get more undying substances? The green sparrow was excited. It should be so, Lin Sun said, but don't get too excited. Think about what you can offer in exchange. Lin Sun always felt that the green sparrow was far more than an ordinary sparrow. The green sparrow suddenly stopped talking, as if she was really lost in thought. Next, Lin Sun continued to search in this universe alone, as if he regarded this place as a treasure-hunting place. However, no one knew how much pressure he had to bear as time passed. The broken stone tablet he saw before had already said that no one who entered the 9th district could live for more than 24 hours. It was like a line of death was approaching little by little. Where is she? Lin Sun frowned, his expression uncertain. Until now, he didn't find any danger or abnormality at all. Everything was so quiet, but the more it was so, the more uneasy Lin Sun felt. The 24 hours were about to arrive. Lin Sun stopped on a huge star, called out Little Five, and set up the formation of falling heavens. He ran his cultivation to the extreme, and the abyssal sword cauldron had been floating in front of him, ready to fight and make all kinds of preparations. Would she come? Lin Sun was not sure, but he had to be on guard. Time went by bit, but it seemed so long and torturous at this moment. Until the 24 hours came, the world was silent, and the surroundings were silent. Nothing unexpected happened. Lin Sun, who had been in an unprecedented state of tension, felt a little disappointed at this moment. If she appeared, at least he could deal with and fight. But if she didn't appear, the potential threat was destined to linger in his heart, making it impossible for Lin Sun to relax and be at ease. At this time, Lin Sun's face also became gloomy. This kind of passive and unknown feeling was undoubtedly too torturous, which could almost drive people crazy. Master, there is a pair of eyes behind you. Suddenly, Little Five, who was sitting in the formation of falling heavens, seemed to find something and let out a scream, with his face turning pale. At this moment, Lin Sun's hair stood on end, and he suddenly turned around. Then he saw the pair of eyes. They opened in the void, and the illusory light rain was flowing in the pupils, which was strange and frightening. When his eyes met this pair of eyes, Lin Sun only felt an indescribable chill surging over his body. The deadly dangerous breath stimulated his muscles and made his pores stand on end. What kind of eyes were these? The light rain was flowing, empty and lonely. At first glance, it seemed to drag people's souls into it, which was so strange that it was terrifying. Just at the moment when Lin Sun saw this pair of strange eyes, silently, a white figure emerged behind him and suddenly pounced on him. Master! Little Five screamed in horror and anger. The formation of falling heavens seemed to have no effect on the white figure at all, as if it didn't exist at all. The most terrible thing was that when the white figure appeared, there was no sound at all, nor did it attract Lin Sun's attention. This was undoubtedly very horrifying. The white figure was about to touch Lin Sun. Buzz! A lotus pattern suddenly swept out of the abyssal sword cauldron, releasing a golden light rain of order, which shrouded the white figure. It was the order of Nirvana. With a bang, the white figure staggered back and wanted to dodge and escape at the first time. But at this moment, the Nirvana order shone brightly and suddenly released thousands of divine chains of order, which were crystal clear and magnificent. In an instant, like a cage of order, the white figure was imprisoned. Also at this time, the strange eyes were filled with pain, and it let out a violent scream. Then, with a bang, it turned into a gray light rain and dissipated. From the appearance of the pair of eyes, to the sudden attack of the white figure, until the Nirvana order swept out, it all happened in the blink of an eye. It was incredibly fast and terrifying to the extreme. When Lin Sun came to his senses, a layer of cold sweat appeared on his back, as if he had just walked on the edge of death. He raised his eyes and looked at the white figure. The crystal-clear divine chains of order turned into a cage, and in the cage, the white figure squirmed as if it was burning emitting wisps of strange gray smoke, as if it had suffered great pain. However, it didn't make any sound. Lin Sun's expression was uncertain. If the Nirvana order didn't appear in time this time, the consequences would be absolutely unimaginable. It was too strange. The white figure could appear silently without being noticed by him. It was many times more brilliant than the crane in the hidden void world. After a moment, as the haze around the white figure gradually dissipated, Lin Sun finally saw the appearance of the other party clearly. Her black hair was like ink, her small face was plain and delicate, and her skin was glowing with a kind of translucent and flawless pale color. She seemed to be suffering endless pain. Her eyes were closed tightly, and her fine and dark eyelashes were trembling like small fans. Lin Sun was stunned at once. How could it be a little girl? Chapter 25:48. She indeed looked like a 13 or 14-year-old girl, young and elegant. Dressed in white, she looked delicate and charming. If she was not imprisoned in the divine chains of order, people would think that she was a pretty girl from a humble family, glowing with a pure and innocent aura. Is this the her who survived from the last era? The terrifying existence that caused so many immortals to die of hatred? Lin Sun's eyes flickered as his heart surged. He had thought that the other party was a ferocious existence, but now it seemed that it was completely different from what he had imagined. Whoosh, the rebirth order was still displaying its might. It was crystalline and dazzling, and the energy it emanated was like numerous divine whips that struck fiercely onto the young woman's body, causing her body to tremble while her clear and pretty little face turned ghastly pale. Her eyes were closed tightly while her delicate figure curled up on the spot. Her cherry lips were pale and bloodless. They were tightly pursed, and she did not make a single sound from the beginning to the end. This scene would probably make many people's hearts ache and feel sorry for her. But both Lin Sun and Little Five looked very calm. If anyone really treated this girl as a pitiful little lamb, they would really be blind, and it would be no different from courting death. Lin Sun was also curious about the aura of this girl in white that caused the Nirvana order to take the initiative to kill her. It was very unbelievable. After the time it took to finish a cup of tea, the young girl in white was beaten to the point that her entire body was covered in a rain of light. Although her skin and flesh didn't split open, nor did she bleed, her body revealed an illusory feeling as if it was about to collapse. At this moment, Cyan Sparrow suddenly said, "Although I can't wait for you to kill this little girl, I have to remind you that she is very likely to be a spirit of order." Her voice was very complicated and subtle. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and his heart trembled. He had long heard that in the eternal world, only the rarest ninth-grade heavenly order could give birth to a spirit of order. It was a mysterious spirit, just like the weapon spirit of a sovereign weapon or the formation spirit of a formation. However, a spirit of order was born from the power of order, and an ordinary ninth-grade heavenly order could not give birth to one. It had to be an extremely rare ninth-grade heavenly calamity order. The spirit of order did not have true intelligence, but it could control and operate the power of order, and unleash the power of order to an unprecedented level. The most amazing thing was that with a spirit of order, it could continuously transform the power of order. In the past, Lin Sun had only talked about this as a distant rumor. After all, he had never seen the power of order before. Not to mention learning about the extremely rare rank 9 heaven-level sequence. As a spirit of order, it seemed even more ethereal and illusory. But Lin Sun didn't expect that the girl in white who was imprisoned by the Nirvana order was actually a spirit of order. Cyan Sparrow's and Lin Sun's. Perhaps even it hadn't expected that Lin Sun would stumble across such a fortune that would drive even the immortal Emperor clans crazy. After a while, Cyan Sparrow said, "Moreover, it's a spirit of order that survived from the destruction of the previous era. You should be aware of how extraordinary this spirit of order is to be able to withstand the power of the destruction of an era. Of course, Lin soon knew that if he could subdue the spirit of order, it would be equivalent to mastering a complete power of order, and it would be a rare ninth-grade heavenly order. Such a value would be enough for any immortal emperor clan to snatch the head. If the head was in their hands, it would cause an unimaginable reign of terror and even a catastrophe. Judging by the situation, the Nirvana Order was obviously planning to destroy the girl. That was why Cyan Sparrow could not stay calm and warned him. But the awkward thing was Lin Sun could not control the Nirvana Order at all. Even if he had subdued the Nirvana Order, he could not even control the Phoenix Flame, let alone the Nirvana Order. Fortunately, it wasn't long before the white-clothed young woman seemed to be unable to hold on any longer, and she fell into a strange silent state. Even her pained expression had become calm and peaceful. Then, as the rain of light scattered, the Nirvana Order kept the girl and returned to the abyssal sword cauldron. Lin soon heaved a sigh of relief. It was good that she was not killed. The Azure Sparrow said in a sour tone, "Those who survive a great disaster are bound to be blessed with good fortune. But isn't your fortune a little too great? If the great forces of power in eternal true world learn of this, they will definitely cut you down with a flurry of blades." Lin Sun smiled. The more Cyan Sparrow said, the more it proved the extraordinariness of the spirit of order. To him, this was great news. Then, Lin Sun sent his divine sense into the abyssal sword cauldron. In the Nirvana Order's world, the girl in white was silent. Her body was surrounded by a rain of light that belonged to the Nirvana Order. As Lin Sun sensed it, a wave of comprehension surged into his mind. Wushuang, the spirit of the origin world. Born in the previous era, it was known as the spirit of heavenly order in the origin world. When the era was destroyed, the heavenly Tao of the origin world collapsed and was destroyed. As the spirit of order in the origin world, Wushuang accidentally obtained a trace of the heavenly secret. She survived the 5 signs of decay and luckily managed to preserve a bit of spirituality, surviving the era's destruction. This comprehension was very vague. Lin Sun only obtained a limited amount of information from the few words. But after knowing all this, Lin Sun still felt a surge of emotions. Wushuang. It was an extremely domineering title. Even more inconceivable was that this girl in white who was called Wushuang wasn't an ordinary world order. She was born from the heavenly Tao of a world called the Origin World. In other words, in the last era, Wushuang was the heavens in the eyes of the cultivators of the Origin World. She was the embodiment of the heavenly Tao. This was undoubtedly inconceivable, and it almost overturned Lin Sun's understanding. In his eyes, even though the Luo clan controlled the forbidden energy of order that covered the ancient starry sky path, and the Luo clan was like the ruler of the heavens. But after all, the forbidden energy of order didn't have a spirit of order. On the other hand, Wushuang was a true spirit that was born from the heavenly Tao of order. Such a comparison showed how terrifying Wushuang's origins were. But Lin soon noticed that after experiencing the calamity of the origin world's heavenly Tao that Wushuang controlled had collapsed and ceased to exist. Only Wushuang obtained a chance at survival and overcame the 5 signs calamity of the Tao, allowing him to luckily survive the destruction of the era. In other words, even though Wushuang was a spirit of order, she'd lost her source and was extremely weak. Perhaps in the years to come, the power of the Nirvana Order can help her recover? Lin Sun couldn't help thinking. After all, the order of the netherworld of the last era was now being reborn in the Nirvana Order. How is it? Cyan Sparrow asked anxiously. What kind of magic does the spirit of order have? Lin Sun thought for a while and said, the source has been lost. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to recover. Cyan Sparrow sneered. As long as the spirit of order is not destroyed, as long as she continues to collect the strength of order and let her refine it, sooner or later she can rebuild the source and restore the original power. If you don't want it, how about giving it to me? I promise I'll give you an unexpected reward. Her eyes were fiery and full of expectation. Lin Sun said thoughtfully, You mean, as long as we collect enough strength of order, we can help her restore the source? Cyan Sparrow was stunned and suddenly wanted to slap herself. Why did she leak this out? Now, this guy definitely wouldn't give up the spirit of order. Humph. It's not so easy to collect the strength of order, especially for a spirit of order like her to rebuild the source. I don't know how much strength of order will be collected. You alone can do it. Cyan Sparrow showed a look of pity. I don't know when I can help her collect enough strength of order. Lin Sun said, It doesn't matter. I'm not in a hurry. Cyan Sparrow was annoyed but helpless. She suddenly said, Aren't you afraid that I'll tell others about this? Aren't you afraid of paying the price? Lin Sun asked. Cyan Sparrow sneered and didn't want to say more. Lin Sun also laughed. The threat from the white-clothed girl Wushuang had been eliminated, which made him completely relaxed. For him, the 9th zone had become the safest place. There are only 2 days left before the end of the trial. It's time to break through the realm, Lin Sun said to himself, with a touch of brightness in his eyes. Originally, he planned to break through the realm after entering the starting city, but who would have thought that the city was also full of treacherous undercurrents, full of dangers and threats, so that his plan to break through the realm was delayed. But now it was completely different. Whoosh! In the next moment, Lin Sun rose up and started to walk in the silent starry sky of the universe. Until his mind became clear and completely calm, Lin Sun stopped in the vast starry sky. He stretched his body and mind, looked up at the universe, and stood alone in the starry sky. He began to break through and meet his own heaven's punishment. Wisps of Taoist light flowed out of his body, blooming with divine brilliance. Vaguely, he seemed to turn into a big abyss across the starry sky. It was as vast as the sky and as deep as the horizon. Boom! It didn't take long. The heaven's punishment came, and the thunder was so violent that it was unbelievable. It was too bright, as if countless stars fell and drowned this place. Lin Sun disappeared directly. He was swallowed by the vast and violent sea of thunder, and the whole star area was submerged by the dazzling lightning. Far away, Cyan Sparrow widened her eyes. If the heaven's punishment of Ju Tong was far beyond that of ordinary emperors, like a river of stars falling down and converging into a vast ocean, then Lin Sun's heaven's punishment was like a sea of thunder crashing down directly. The unprecedented scene caused Qin Ke to be unable to help but be dumbstruck. Was this still a heaven's punishment? A universe was submerged. Could a peerless emperor compete with it? Fortunately, the distance was far enough, otherwise Cyan Sparrow would also be affected. Amidst the terrifying roiling thunder and lightning, there were enormous celestial bodies exploding one after another, transforming into dazzling light that splashed everywhere. But in the midst of the heavenly tribulation, it seemed very inconspicuous, like a few waves that didn't cause any great waves. All this made the heaven's punishment that Lin Sun was facing extraordinarily horrible and abnormal. Literature Library. Chapter 2549. At first, Lin Sun expected that heaven's punishment would be very fierce, but he didn't expect it to be so severe. Cracks appeared on his strong body, and his bones and tendons were cracking. This was a terrifying heavenly punishment. It refined every single piece of flesh in his body, about to smash his bones and destroy his body. Lin Sun summoned the abyssal sword cauldron at once, and it rose and fell with him in the thunderstorm ocean, undergoing the baptism. After an unknown period of time, Lin Sun's bones were broken many times, and his whole body was almost obliterated. He was constantly reforged and reassembled, shining brightly. He endured the pain and resisted the calamity, not daring to relax for even a moment. Boom! Lightning radiance was boundless, submerging the starry sky. As time went on, the power of heavenly punishment tribulation lightning was greater than all previous tribulations, filling up this star domain. Many stars were submerged within, exploding one after another. This was an unprecedented great calamity that was filled with terror. This scene was enough to make any peak great emperor tremble in fear. Ordinary great emperors would definitely turn into ashes at the first moment. Not long later, Lin Sun's body was completely smashed, which was the worst punishment he had ever experienced. But in next to no time, waves of the tune of the Tao resounded from within his body, and then strands of green divine radiance shot out. His shattered body and broken bones were reconstructed once more, and they were fused into one. Enduring the pain of having his body smashed to pieces, Lin soon deduced the great Tao furnace scripture that he had cultivated all over his life, baptizing and refining himself in the thunder punishment. At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron buzzed violently. This cauldron was extraordinary and refined. It was originally a monarch weapon that matched Lin Sun's cultivation. It was condensed from the 9 monarch weapons of Kunlun and contained the power of Order Phoenix Flame. At this moment, as it rose and fell amidst the heavenly tribulation, it was as if it was experiencing extreme tempering, causing it to become even more ancient and mysterious. Rumble! Another exceptional sea of lightning descended. The lightning was resplendent and illuminated the entire cosmos. It was as if the great explosion of the star domain had occurred. The dazzling light was 10,000 times more terrifying than the destruction of countless stars. In just a moment, Lin Sun's flesh and blood flew everywhere. His bones were broken inch by inch, his tendons and veins burst, and his blood splashed everywhere. It was a horrible scene. At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron was also unable to withstand the bombardment. Cracks appeared on its surface, and it was on the verge of shattering into pieces. With the power of his soul and willpower, Lin soon melted his broken body into one, reshaped it, and baptized it constantly. At the same time, the sword cauldron glowed and sprayed with a crystalline and translucent rain of violet light, and it ceaselessly repaired and tempered the body of the cauldron that was covered in cracks that were like spiderwebs. It was a painful ordeal. The thunder tribulation and the divine punishment were beyond Lin's expectation. A little carelessness would destroy both his body and soul. Boom! It was another great tribulation, lightning radiance dazzling, filling the sky, boundless. The most terrifying thing finally happened. The everlasting sword cauldron shattered piece by piece. They floated in the void of the cosmos and revolved around him, losing their luster. How could this be? Abyssal sword cauldron was rare in the world. It was condensed after going through a strange and unpredictable tribulation. Over the years, it was nourished and tempered by the Order Phoenix Flame. It was no longer a life weapon in the ordinary sense. But now it was broken. Tens of thousands of lightning rays and hundreds of millions of divine rays struck down, hitting these fragments with clanging sounds and a deafening collision. A rain of light splashed, and Lin Sun's body was smashed again at this moment. Blood splashed everywhere and fell on the fragments of the sword cauldron. An incredible scene appeared. Blood splashed, and all the fragments of the cauldron glowed. The sword chi of the firmament pierced through the sky, smashed the tribulation thunder, and rumbled and spread, shaking the entire starry sky. Lin Sun was surprised. The fragments of the abyssal sword cauldron were lingering with strands of violet crystal light rain. That was the power of the Order Phoenix Flame. At the same time, lotus petals stuck to the fragments contained a mysterious and unpredictable aura of nirvana. This was the power of the Order of Nirvana. Lin Sun finally realized that although the body of the abyssal sword cauldron was destroyed, its original power did not dissipate. Instead, it was nourished by the Order Phoenix Flame and the power of the Order Nirvana during the tempering of the thunder tribulation. Therefore, the abyssal sword cauldron also showed a kind of rebirth in destruction, carrying out the experience of extreme nirvana sublimation. This was the embodiment of its desire for change. Clang, clang, clang. The blood mixed with the fragments of the cauldron trembled together, emitting a roar. Every fragment of the cauldron had soared chi soaring into the sky, tearing the sea of thunder, clanging and unyielding, resisting the tribulation. And in this catastrophe, Lin Sun's body disintegrated again and again. The blood poured on the fragments of the cauldron, as if it was endowed with life, making it more spiritual. It constantly hummed softly, as if it was shouting. This was a painful tribulation. Lin Sun endured the ravages and slashes of being smashed to pieces every minute and second. His flesh, broken bones, and the cauldron fragments blended together. However, although he suffered unbearable pain, his spirit and willpower had never been obliterated. This gave him the opportunity to reconstruct himself and realize his own transformation. For a moment, Lin Sun and the abyssal sword cauldron seemed to be one. They suffered destruction and reconstruction together, constantly being tempered and sublimated in extreme danger, producing a wonderful resonance, as if they were no longer separated. Boom! All of a sudden, a beam of colorful lightning struck down. Everything was destroyed, and many stars exploded. The area that was covered by the heavenly tribulation was destroyed. Lin Sun's face finally changed. Because this tribulation aimed at his spirit and willpower, he felt a sharp pain as if his spirit was being slashed by tens of thousands of swords in an instant, showing signs of collapse. This was a great disaster. If the body was destroyed, it could be rebuilt, but once the spirit was destroyed, everything would be in vain. Kill! Lin Sun roared, full of determination. The seventh major tribulation was so difficult and terrible, more than 10 times more terrible than the lawless heavens tribulation. Lin Sun was not willing to be defeated like this. He chanted sutras with his willpower and ran the Tao to the extreme, trying to reach the furnace scripture. Like an abyss and a furnace, he strengthened his Tao. His willpower was as strong as iron, and his Dharma image became more and more brilliant. Rumble, 1 bolt, 2 bolts. Countless bolts of lightning descended again, and each time it was different. In the end, his spirit and willpower were shattered many times, and it was difficult to condense into a whole again and again. At this time, Lin Sun had no thoughts at all. He forgot everything, and his mind was unprecedentedly focused, falling into the purest and most extreme state of passing the tribulation. Lin Sun didn't know whether he had passed the 100 tribulations or the 1,000 tribulations. He didn't even feel pain, and all his senses were empty. At this time, a strange change happened to him. His flesh and blood, broken bones, spirit and willpower, as well as the broken pieces of the cauldron, were mixed together, floating in the sea of thunder, being tempered, smelted into one, and carried out a stunning sacrificial refining. He was the furnace. The order of Phoenix Flame and the order of Nirvana lingered around him, glowing with a magnificent light rain. It looked extremely mysterious, and actually blocked the continuous bombardment of the heavens tribulation. Then wait. If the other peak martial monarchs knew about this, they would be flabbergasted, unable to understand what was happening. But at this time it really happened, so mysterious. The divine sound of the great way roared. Lin Sun could not help but think of a rumor. Sovereign weapons were divided into 3 grades and 9 ranks. The 3 grades were mystery grade, spiritual grade, and divinity grade. Among them, mystery grade sovereign weapons were the most common. The Emperor's treasure tattoo produced by one move was divided into 3 ranks. Spiritual grade sovereign weapons were the sovereign weapons that could produce spirit. Such treasures could be regarded as top-notch, and were usually controlled by ancient forces. Divinity-grade sovereign weapons were the rarest, also known as Emperor's Extremity Weapon. They had the terrifying power to collapse a universe and destroy a big world. However, Emperor's Extremity Weapon could only be found by chance, and was almost as ethereal as a legend. According to the rumor, Emperor's extremity weapon, was a part of a great emperor's life, and could last forever and be handed down. Great Emperor Zhuang might have fallen one day, but the Emperor's Tao weapon contained their will and effort. It could shine through the ages and last for all eternity. Now, Lin Sun had a strong hunch that if the abyssal sword cauldron could withstand this refining, it was very likely to have the potential to transform into an Emperor's extremity weapon. Boom! The heavens' retribution continued, and the chaotic air was boiling, sweeping across the sea of stars. The vast chaos turned into endless thunderstorms, which became more and more terrifying. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun's state of integration with the abyssal sword cauldron was broken. This time, the abyssal sword cauldron almost turned into powder, and Lin Sun's flesh and spirit were almost obliterated. This was the most tragic moment. This kind of tribulation represented destruction. It seemed that God wanted to destroy everything, and did not allow Lin Sun and the abyssal sword cauldron to survive. However, in this boundless and terrible destruction, there was a new power, which cut through the vast chaos and shone down from the depths of the sky. Lin Sun had no fear, no anxiety, and appeared to be in a state of emptiness. All thoughts, emotions, ideas were gone. After going through so many tribulations and wandering between life and death, he was neither sad nor happy. There was only an instinctive will to operate the Tao, and to deduce the Tao and Dharma. Not afraid of life and death. Not afraid of hardships. Only my Tao would grow and multiply. Lin Sun's will became purer and firmer. The abyssal sword cauldron had turned into powder, and his spirit and body were in tatters, but they contained the hope of survival, and were about to undergo a qualitative change. This great tribulation lasted for an unusually long time, and was different from the past. In the end, an incredible phenomenon emerged in the vast sea of thunder. Bolts of thunder retribution condensed, and turned into a primordial world that seemed like the beginning of chaos. Clear and turbid were divided, and heaven and earth were first born. All things were born, including the sky, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the universe. Then, all kinds of gods, demons, creatures, birds, and insects emerged, whistling in the primordial world. These were bolts of lightning, not real creatures. Kuanping spread its wings and soared up to 90,000 miles. Gods and demons roared and fought in the universe, smashing the sun, the moon, and the stars. At this most dangerous moment, Lin Sun seemed to be completely unaware of it. He sat there with his legs crossed, and his flesh, body, and spirit were constantly broken and recombined, swallowing and spitting out lightning. No thoughts, no fear. Far away, the cyan sparrow stood there in a daze. Around its body, a magnificent and dazzling red divine chain was lingering, dispelling the power of thunder retribution that was constantly surging in the starry sky. Literature Hall. Chapter 2550. Boom. Expanse after expanse of seas of lightning descended, and they surged through this expanse of the universe as if they intended to obliterate the world. After an unknown period of time, an incredible scene appeared. The sword cauldron was finally formed. There were all types of wondrous patterns on its surface. There were galaxies swirling about, deities roaring from the primal chaos, releasing rumbling noises. Flowers, birds, fish, and insects adorned it while the sun and moon were arranged in an orderly manner. They formed mysterious markings of the Tao, and there were numerous ancient and grand scriptures inscribed on it. They glowed brilliantly and revealed the profundities of the grand Tao. It was the great Tao furnace scripture. Besides this, within the sword cauldron, the sword of the Tao floated up and down, and it emitted clanging sounds. The body of the sword seemed even more simple and ancient, and it was a divine object that concealed itself and was indescribably obscure. Dang, dang, dang. The tribulation lightning struck down, but it was blocked by the sword cauldron one by one. Dazzling arcs of lightning shot out and flowed like a waterfall. Vaguely, the sword cauldron seemed to possess a true spirituality and life. Various mysterious and unfathomable patterns ceaselessly surged into appearance around the sword cauldron. Plants, fish, insects, mountains, rivers, all phenomena, the universe, the sun, moon, stars, fiend gods, all of this caused the cauldron to seem even more boundless. It was just a cauldron, but it seemed to contain an entire universe. However, Lin Sun knew nothing about it. He didn't have any other thoughts, only relying on his instincts to deduce the Tao and repair his flesh. Divine light shone resplendently as he sat there, chanting scriptures. When the abyssal sword cauldron was formed, Lin Sun's transformation had reached the most critical moment. Boom! His body was reconstructed, his sea of blood surged, and he tempered his body and cultivation to the absolute peak in one go. It was like he'd broken through the barrier of a natural chasm, passed through an extraordinary threshold, and stepped into the void refinement realm in one go. At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron was also rumbling. The various scenes and Tao patterns inscribed on it were all trembling as though they were about to come to life. It was even to the extent that she could hear the rumbling of the Tao. It seemed as if it was coming from the chaos at the beginning of time, and it was dignified, vast, and grand. Rumble, a myriad of streaks of lightning poured down, cleansing this cauldron, causing it to become even more dignified and majestic. It emitted an inviolable aura, as if it could crush the sky and exist eternally. The abyssal sword cauldron buzzed incessantly, and from the body of the cauldron, a rain of light rained down. Each strand was comparable to a peerlessly sharp sword chi, capable of cutting through the sun, moon, and stars. At this moment, it had undergone a complete transformation, and its might was unparalleled. The tribulation lightning in the heavens and the earth were unable to harm it in the slightest. As the sword cauldron rushed up, it devoured billions of lightning bolts. In a short moment, it swept away almost all the lightning in the sky. Open! At the same time, Lin Sun stood up and roared. The star field moved, and his tall figure rushed out of hundreds of millions of rays of light. The power of the Emperor realm was overwhelming. He punched the sky and hit the last light of tribulation. Boom! This expanse of the universe fell into violent unrest. The boundless sea of tribulation lightning seemed as if it was crushed by the hand of the heavens, and it rumbled as it exploded, causing the torrents that shot out to spread out and obliterated countless great stars. At this moment, Lin Sun's imposing figure was like a beam of light, tearing through the ages and stunning the world. Bang! In the extreme distance, a dark bronze mirror shattered before the azure sparrow. It couldn't help but gasp. Originally, it intended to use the bronze mirror to inscribe everything it saw before it and transform it into a screen of light that existed forever. But never had it imagined that this tribulation couldn't be remembered at all, and it seemed as if the secrets of the heavens couldn't be revealed. Withdraw! Lin Sun shouted from extremely far away. No matter if it was his body, soul, willpower, or the abyssal sword cauldron, they were like a whale swallowing the sea as they ceaselessly swallowed the dispersed light of tribulation. The vast might of the Emperor realm spread out, covering the heavens and covering the earth. Crossing the threshold of the 7th level of the Emperor realm caused Lin Sun and the abyssal sword cauldron to undergo a qualitative transformation, and they'd stepped onto the heavenly stairway and realized the sublimation of their life. In a sense, the 7th level of the Emperor realm was like stepping into a completely new realm for Lin Sun, and it was completely different from before. It's over. Lin Sun had ascended to the peak of the 7th level, and he stood alone in the starry sky at this moment. The tribulation lightning vanished, and the numerous great stars in this expanse of the starry sky exploded into pieces. Only now did it return to silence, and starlight sprinkled down and illuminated the surroundings. A silver waterfall covered the sky, and boundless starlight sprinkled down and condensed towards him, baptizing his body and replenishing the huge amount of energy he'd consumed. In the end, everything dispersed, and only Lin Sun stood alone in the starry sky. The abyssal sword cauldron floated above his head, and millions of strands of Tao light and divine brilliance fell down, causing him to look blurry and unreal. Looking at it from afar, the starry sky was cold, and the universe was vast. He was all alone, and it seemed as if he'd endured the loneliness of eternity, indistinct and indistinct. But the feeling he gave others was like that of a ruler who swallowed the universe and reigned supreme since ancient times. This tribulation had taken a long time, and it was unprecedentedly dangerous. His soul, body, flesh, tendons, and bones had been shattered countless times, and every time it was reconstructed, it was no less than experiencing a rebirth of life and death. Similarly, the abyssal sword cauldron was probably the same. Lin Sun sat cross-legged and started to consolidate his new cultivation. The biggest change in the 7th level of the Emperor Realm was that a universe had been opened up in the Emperor Realm. The sun, moon, and stars circulated in it, shining brilliantly, and all kinds of auspicious lights of the Great Way fell down, which complemented and merged with the Emperor Realm, forming a unique and perfect harmony. At this level, the practitioner's cultivation was full of divine light, and his Dharma form was perfect. His body and spirit were wonderful, and he was extremely precise and thorough, returning emptiness to truth. In fact, it was tantamount to beginning to explore the mysteries of emptiness and reality, existence and non-existence, truth and emptiness. At the same time, Lin Sun felt that the abyssal sword cauldron had also undergone a new transformation. The Order Phoenix flame seemed to be completely shattered, turning into wisps of power and merging into the cauldron. Around the cauldron, there appeared the eternal universe and all kinds of phenomena in the sky. There were mysterious Taoist patterns floating and sinking, and there was a kind of boundless spirit that could suppress the past, present, and future. In the sword cauldron, the Taoist sword was simple and unadorned, but it gave people the feeling that as long as it was born, it could split the world and run through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. In addition, the Nirvana order turned into a lotus pattern floating in it, and the 9 Taoist patterns of the netherworld loomed, shining with inexplicable luster. More than a dozen quietus fire of order were firmly suppressed in the deepest part of the cauldron. The whole cauldron gave Lin Sun a kind of symbiotic feeling, as if it had become a part of his life. One day later, Lin Sun woke up from meditation and stood up. The green sparrow had already flashed over, and she said, "Heng Tianxuo, that old geezer, would probably never have imagined that the 9th area that was originally sufficient to consign you to eternal damnation would instead allow you to realize a completely new transformation in your cultivation." Heng Tianxuo. A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's eyes, and he said, "Fortune and misfortune depend on each other, and life and death are unpredictable. When I go back this time, I will send this old thing to hell." After saying that, he took out his identity certificate. There was a rain of light, but there was no path leading to the outside world. Cyan Sparrow shouted at once, "Heng Tianxuo, he obviously tampered with your identity certificate. Even if you survive in the 9th district, it's impossible for you to leave." Lin Sun's heart was surging with killing intent, but he looked calm. He put away the identity certificate and looked around. After a while, he thought of something. Clang! In the abyssal sword cauldron, a Taoist sword rose to the sky, like an invincible light, and tore a huge crack in the collapsed and empty universe. Cyan Sparrow was stunned. How could this work? "Let's go." Lin Sun rushed out first. In the universe outside the world of the trial, waves of void appeared one after another, and in the void leading to the world of the trial, there began to appear one after another. Feng Junlin, Yu Duqiu, Xiang Xiaoyuan and other peerless figures took the lead to come out. Heng Zhan, the guard commander of the Castellan mansion, and a group of soldiers stood indifferently in the distance, watching the exit. They had been waiting here for a month. As the void flickered, many Emperor Realm figures returned one after another. Some looked gloomy, some relieved, some depressed, and some longed for more. They all had different expressions. Those who collected enough stellar source were full of smiles, while those who didn't were disappointed. Compared to those who came out alive, more people had died in the world of the trial. As time went by, there were experts coming out one after another, but the number was very small. In the end, there were only about 100 people who came out alive. One should know that there were more than 600 Emperor Realm figures who participated in the trial this time. Did Ling Xuanzi really die? Someone couldn't help but ask. They were about to return to the City of Beginnings, but Ling Xuanzi still hadn't shown up, which surprised many people. "It's time, let's go back to the city," Heng Zhan ordered. "Wait, what's the harm in waiting a little longer? It's not like we're in a hurry," Yuduchio said with a frown. "I've brought many people to participate in the trial over the years. Every time this time comes, it's destined that no one will come out alive. It's a waste of time to wait any longer," Heng Zhan said coldly. "What if someone is still alive?" Yuduchio asked. Heng Zhan said expressionlessly, "The trial is over. My duty is to bring you out, not waste time here." Yuduchio couldn't help but sigh. He had a glimmer of hope, but who would have thought that a miracle wouldn't happen? "It looks like Ling Xuanzi has really died. That's for the best." Someone laughed with a cold expression. Heng Zhan spoke abruptly when he heard this. "That's true. In my opinion, Ling Xuanzi can dream of making another appearance in this world." He was the only one who knew that Lin Sun would not be able to leave alive after entering the 9th region. Boom! Suddenly, an earth-shattering sound rang out. The space in the distance exploded, and a figure like a god tore through the sky, teleporting over, shaking the heavens. "What? He's out." Everyone was shocked. The person was shrouded in divine light. His figure was tall and his aura was as strong as the abyss. He stepped through the void and came out. It was Lin Sun. However, his aura was extremely terrifying at the moment. It was as if he was a god that descended to the mortal world. It was shocking. Heng Zhan, in particular, thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. He was just saying that Lin Sun would not be able to come out alive. Now that he saw Lin Sun coming out, he couldn't help but scream. How is this possible? He couldn't believe it. P.S. Should we add more updates tonight? Please spend your monthly votes. Literature Hall. Chapter 2551. Why not? Could it be that Commander Heng Zhan already knew that my nameplate had been tampered with? Even if I could survive in the 9th area, I wouldn't be able to get out at all? Lin Sun's cold eyes locked on Heng Zhan with terrifying power. The crowd was restless, and many people's faces changed. The 9th area. A long time ago, even immortals would die if they entered it. So in the recent 10,000 years, no one was assigned there. Because everyone knew that entering it was no different from courting death. But Ling Xuanzi was assigned to the 9th area. Many people soon realized that it was Heng Tianshua's revenge when they thought of the grudge between Lin Sun and Wen Xiaoheng. Feng Junlin, Xiang Xiaoyuan and Yuduchio, who had already known that Lin Sun was in the 9th area, also changed their faces slightly at this moment. Because they now knew that Lin Sun was not only tricked, but also tampered with his identity card. Heng Tianxua and Wen Xiaoheng are too cruel. They couldn't calm down and looked at Lin Sun with strange eyes. Under such circumstances, it was undoubtedly a miracle that Lin Sun could get out alive. Heng Zhan's face darkened and he scolded, "Ridiculous! If your identity card was tampered with, how could you get out of the trial world? It doesn't matter if you don't admit it, because I don't intend to argue with dirty and despicable people like you." Lin Sun's eyes were deep, and his expression was cold. "How dare you?" A soldier shouted. "You framed the city lord in public and dared to speak rudely. Ling Xuanzi, don't you want to leave here alive?" Lin Sun sneered and slashed out a sword chi. Crack! The soldier waved his bronze halberd to resist, but it was cut into pieces in an instant. He couldn't block it at all, and the armor in front of him exploded. His whole body was split into two halves, and blood spurted out. Everyone was shocked. It was too fast. From the soldier's hostility to Lin Sun's sword, it was all done in a flash. Overbearing sword. Blood splattered everywhere, and the sword chi tore through the sky with a rumbling sound. The scene was silent. This scene sent a chill down everyone's spine. Everyone looked at Lin Sun. Killing a soldier in public, especially a soldier of the Castellan mansion, was the most aggressive provocation with blood. Since ancient times, none of the martial emperors in the vast 1,000 battle domains dared to provoke the forces guarding the immortal heaven pass. Although Lin Sun killed a soldier, he represented the dignity of the Castellan mansion. All this was enough to prove that the furious Lin Sun had completely thrown caution to the wind and was going to set off a bloody revenge. Ling Xuanzi, do you know the consequences of doing this? Some soldiers stepped forward and pointed at Lin Sun with bronze spears or long swords, showing a piercing killing intent. This is beginning city's territory. No matter where you come from, no matter what your identity is, you will pay the price for violating the city's rules, shouted a soldier. Puff! Suddenly, a bloody light flew up, and an illusory sword chi flashed and pierced through the soldier's glabella, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Lin Sun said indifferently, "You are just a bunch of servants. The matter between me and Heng Tianxua has nothing to do with you. If you don't want to die, you'd better not bark. Otherwise, I don't mind killing all of you. He has rebelled and killed people here. He disobeyed the rules of the Castellan mansion and is the enemy of all of us. Everyone, attack together and kill him. Everyone will be rewarded." Heng Zhan's face was livid, and he shouted loudly, which resounded throughout the scene and pinned a big hat on Lin Sun. If such a crime was confirmed, he would be regarded as a traitor by the 49 immortal heaven passes. Boom! A group of soldiers attacked, their spears swept, and their swords whistled. Every one of them could be said to be the best of the best. Sharp, murderous, and shocking. In fact, the origin of these soldiers was not simple. They were all martial emperors who crossed the starry sky and roamed the vast 1,000 battle domains. However, because they disobeyed the rules of the city, they were suppressed by the immortal emperor clan. In order to survive, they became soldiers of the city and served the Castellan mansion for generations. Haha, what a tyrannical guard of the Castellan mansion. You have the power to kill whoever you want. Lin Sun laughed. In front of him, the void shattered, and a Dao sword swept out, shaking the surrounding space and sweeping across. The group of soldiers who rushed forward were all blown away by the sword. They were like chickens and dogs, and the weapons in their hands were crushed. A rain of light scattered. Once the sword was out, it was like a hot knife through butter. You dare to resist and become the enemy of all the experts in the city. A soldier roared, his expression ferocious. He called for everyone to charge forward, but his words came to an abrupt stop. The incomparably sharp sword chi turned into a dazzling bolt of lightning and killed him. The sword chi cut through his forehead, and a bloody wound spread all the way to his lower abdomen. Then, with a puff, blood spurted out a few feet, and his body was split into two halves. After that, as Lin Sun made his move, the nearby soldiers who rushed up were all easily killed. A thick rain of blood splashed, dyeing the starry sky red. The scene was extremely horrifying. The nearby Emperor Realm figures who came out of the trial world all had their hearts in turmoil and stayed far away. Many people were shocked. They couldn't believe that Lin Sun's method was so overbearing and iron-blooded. This was too strong. Ling Xuanzi, what do you want to do? Heng Zhan couldn't calm down, and his face was extremely ugly. Lin Sun said coldly, "What I want to do, didn't you see it? Blood for blood, a tooth for a tooth. You really want to be the enemy of the Castellan mansion, and the entire great 1,000 battle domain?" Heng Zhan asked coldly. He had been able to keep his composure and didn't make a move. "How can I be an enemy of the world when I kill some scum? You open your mouth and shut your mouth, you old thing, your heart is terrible. Lin Sun's eyes became colder and colder. They are the guards of the city. If the castellan knows that you killed them so wantonly, he will definitely not let you go. He will definitely kill you personally. Heng Zhan's voice was filled with threat. Also, don't forget that this beginning city is now under the control of my Heng family. Many people's hearts tightened. The immortal Emperor clan, Heng family, was a great force in the eternal world. Looking at the entire beginning city, which Emperor realm figure dared to offend them? However, Lin Sun smiled, but that smile was emotionless as he said, "What a coincidence, I'm going to find Heng Tianxua to settle a score. Why don't you lead the way?" Heng Zhan's face completely changed. He didn't expect that Lin Sun would not even put the Heng family in his eyes. "Quick, attack together and kill him!" Heng Zhan roared. A group of soldiers rushed out from behind, armed and full of murderous intent. Lin Sun stepped forward and did not dodge. Instead, he formed a sword with his fingers and slashed out in the void. Swish! With one slash, more than a dozen emperor weapons shattered. With a poof, the leader was even sent flying. Then, with a bang, the soldier's body split into 4 or 5 pieces and directly exploded. Scarlet blood splattered and flew in all directions. Before the power of this slash dissipated, Lin Sun's second, third, fourth slash had already been slashed out in succession. Rumble! This area seemed to be crushed and fell into a violent turbulence. Brilliant and vast sword chi intersected, bringing about scarlet blood rain. How was this a battle? This was clearly a massacre. The great emperors who were participating in the trial in the distance were so shocked that their scalps went numb and their hearts trembled. Too strong. The killing power that Lin Sun displayed at this moment made even them tremble in fear. Feng Junlin, Yu Duqiu, Xiang Xiaoyuan, and the others were all shocked. They were all keenly aware that Lin Sun had broken through. Now, he was already a peak 7th rank Emperor realm existence. When they thought about how his combat strength was already heaven-defying and abnormal when he was at 6th rank Emperor realm, how terrifying would he be after breaking through? In a few blinks of the eye, all the soldiers in the field were killed. The smell of blood was like a vast ocean, soaking in this cold, starry sky. It was a shocking sight. "Ling Xuanzi, are you trying to rebel?" Heng Zhan was furious, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. As a member of the Heng clan, he was high and mighty in the past, and no one dared to disrespect him. But now, someone had killed his soldiers repeatedly. This made him even dare not to believe it. Rebel? Just because you're from the Heng clan, you really think you're the ruler? As his words sounded, Lin Sun had already charged over. At this moment, everyone was shocked because no one thought that Lin Sun would really dare to attack Heng Zhan. This was equivalent to saying that he didn't even care about the threat of the Heng clan. "Rise!" Heng Zhan roared, and a burning red talisman spread out. The Emperor's aura was monstrous, covering the sky and earth. It contained the sun, moon, and stars as if it was a real universe. This was an extremely powerful and terrifying Emperor weapon. The materials used were rare and precious enough to make a 9th realm ancestor drool. Wisps of terrifying aura overflowed from the red talisman. It was as heavy as hundreds of millions of caddies, and it pressed down on the starry sky as if it was about to collapse. Lin Sun's expression did not change as he directly reached out to grab the red talisman. He was not afraid of the overwhelming pressure at all. He wanted to tear the sky apart with a single hand. Boom! All the Tao lights were scattered. Lin Sun's large hand was like a hot knife through butter as it grabbed the red talisman with a tyrannical power. "Suppress!" Heng Zhan roared. This red talisman refined a starry sky world. It contained all kinds of unfathomable mysteries and could deduce incredible power. It could imprison ghosts and gods and kill 9th realm ancestors. However, no matter how many divine abilities and Tao techniques he had, Lin Sun just pushed his palm forward. His 5 fingers were like a claw, crushing all the power and destroying it continuously. This made Heng Zhan so shocked that his eyeballs almost fell out. He exhausted his limit and pushed the power of the red talisman to the extreme. A terrifying scene happened. Boom! In the red talisman, burning stars appeared and rushed out. They slowly rotated like a burning river of stars and suppressed Lin Sun. The fire was like a sea, rumbling. Everyone gasped. At this moment, the majestic ancient stars filled the sky and filled the sky. They also felt threatened and subconsciously retreated far away again. Bang! 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 With a series of bursting sounds, Lin Sun waved his fist and smashed all the burning stars into pieces, exploding them in the void. The unparalleled power of the fist made the red talisman tremble violently, as if it was about to disintegrate. Heng Zhan's body was cold and his hair stood on end. He was an existence who was only one step away from entering the first realm ancestor realm. He came from the eternal world and mastered all kinds of supreme secret technique. He was far from ordinary ninth realm ancestors. But now, in the battle with Lin Sun, he almost had no power to resist. Boom! Amidst the ear-piercing sound, Lin Sun reached out and grabbed the red talisman in his hand, completely suppressing it. Heng Zhan coughed up blood and his face was pale. He completely realized that something was wrong and did not dare to hesitate. He turned and tore through the sky, wanting to escape. But Lin Sun was faster. His figure flashed and rushed forward. His palm and fingers were like a cage of the great Tao, enveloping him with a rumbling sound. In an instant, Heng Zhan was completely suppressed like a bird in a cage. Witnessing this scene, the whole place was silent and the heroes were shocked. P.S. Thank you, Brother Bandit and the others for your gifts and support. Tomorrow, to express my gratitude, I will continue to update. Chapter 2552. Heng Zhan was suppressed. The surroundings were deathly silent, not a single sound could be heard. Even Yu Duqiu, Xiang Xiaoyuan, and Feng Junlin were shocked by this scene. They knew very well how terrible Heng Zhan was. If they were in Heng Zhan's position, it would be impossible for them to defeat him without using their trump cards. But Lin Sun suppressed Heng Zhan in an overbearing manner with his own cultivation. How could they remain calm after such a comparison? As for the others present, they were all dumbfounded. It was already a miracle that Lin Sun could walk out of the 9th zone of the trial world alive. But now, he directly killed more than 20 soldiers guarding the city and captured Heng Zhan from the Heng family. Crack! Lin Sun broke Heng Zhan's knees and imprisoned him. He knelt on the ground and then looked at everyone present. Everyone who was swept by his eyes became stiff and uncomfortable. What did this guy want to do? In this silence, Lin Sun smiled slightly, revealing his snow-white teeth, and said, "Everyone, I have a hunch that the city of beginning will be in chaos. If you want to leave the city as soon as possible, I can help you." Everyone was stunned and a little confused. What was going on? He was killing people just now. Now he wanted to help others? What kind of help? Yu Duqiu was interested. Good question. Lin Sun smiled brightly. He turned over his palm, and more than 30 pieces of stellar source appeared. I believe many of you have not collected 10 pieces of stellar source. I happen to have a lot of surplus here. I can exchange with you, Lin Sun said with a smile. According to the market price, 1 piece of stellar source costs 500,000 eternal void source crystals. I can make it cheaper, only 400,000 eternal void source crystals. Of course, you can also exchange it with underworld pearl. Yu Duqiu, others, all of them had a confused expression on their faces. Was this still the ruthless, cold-blooded and ruthless man just now? He wanted to talk about business in the blink of an eye. This contrast was really unexpected. Does no one want it? Lin Sun asked. Finally, someone plucked up his courage and said, I need 3 pieces of stellar source. Lin Sun readily agreed and completed the transaction smoothly. With someone taking the lead, Quite a number of people were tempted. Stellar essence was related to whether they could leave Starting City and continue moving towards the eternal true world. There was no way the emperors who had not managed to gather enough stellar essence could resist this temptation. Moreover, he could buy a piece of stellar source for 400,000 eternal void source crystals. Even if he could not use it, he could sell it for 500,000 eternal void source crystals. All of a sudden, the stellar source that Lin Sun had collected became a hot commodity. Some were exchanged with eternal void source crystals, while others were exchanged with underworld pearls. "Are you short of money, Brother Ling?" Yuduchu couldn't help but ask. He felt that Lin Sun's action was a bit embarrassing. "Yes," Lin Sun answered without hesitation. Yuduchu didn't know what to say. "You've killed so many guards and captured Heng Zhan. Aren't you worried that Heng Tianxue will take revenge on you after you return to Starting City?" Xiang Xiaoyuan asked. Her voice was clear and melodious. "Heng Tianxue should be the one to worry about," said Lin Sun. Xiang Xiaoyuan couldn't help but stare at Lin Sun for a long time. She really couldn't figure out who gave Lin Sun the confidence to declare war against a city lord. After a while, Lin Sun sold all the excess stellar essence in his hand. He got more than a dozen underworld pearls and millions of first-class eternal void source crystals. After doing all of this, Lin Sun didn't waste any time. He brought Heng Zhan with him and flew towards Starting City. The others also followed him when they saw this. Everyone had a premonition that a storm would rise in Starting City of the first pass of immortality as soon as Lin Sun returned. Starting City. City Lord's Mansion. In a big hall, when Xiaoheng paced back and forth with his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was uncertain, and he couldn't calm down. Today was the day the trial would end. Although when Xiaoheng was very sure that Lin Sun would not be able to return after entering District Number 9, he couldn't be completely at ease before he confirmed Lin Sun's death. Heng Tianxue sat casually on the main seat nearby. He was fiddling with a beast bone that was as white as snow. He was calm and composed. "Nephew, there's always calmness when there's a big event. Moreover, it's just eradicating a peak great emperor who came from the starry ancient path. It's not a big deal. There's no need to worry about it." Heng Tianxue glanced at Wen Xiaoheng and shook his head with a smile. Immortals who entered District Number 9 would never return. Moreover, Ling Xuanzi's identity certificate had been tampered with. It was already destined that he would never return alive. "Uncle, it's not that I'm impatient. It's just that Ling Xuanzi is extremely cunning. I've already suffered in his hands twice. I really don't dare to underestimate him anymore," Wen Xiaoheng said with a gloomy expression. "The first time was in the departed soul region. He was almost killed and managed to survive with his life-saving trump card. The second time was in Tianyu Tower. If it wasn't for Granny Shui saving him, he wouldn't have survived either." These two experiences were like nightmares for Wen Xiaoheng. How could he still dare to underestimate Lin Sun? He's still too young, Heng Tianxue couldn't help but sigh. Even if Wen Xiaoheng had cultivated for thousands of years, he was still lacking in the eyes of an old man like Heng Tianxue who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Wen Xiaoheng was just about to say something. Heng Tianxue's sleeves fluttered and shattered jade tokens appeared. When he saw these cracked, dim, and lifeless jade tokens, the face of Heng Tianxue, who was calm and composed earlier, had turned gloomy and unsightly to the extreme. When Xiaoheng discerned the origins of those jade tokens with a single glance, he knew that it was a restriction treasure that controlled the guards of the governor's estate. Once it shattered, it meant that the guards were in trouble. "Uncle, what's going on?" Wen Xiaoheng's voice was strange. "Didn't you say that there's always calmness when there's a big event? Aren't you exasperated as well?" Something unexpected happened in the trial. The soldiers who followed Heng Zhan to the trial world have all died. Not a single one of them survived. Heng Tianxue took a deep breath while divine light shot out from his eyes. It was extremely shocking. "If I'm not wrong, This matter is probably related to Ling Xuanzi. When Xiaoheng's heart shook violently. He couldn't be bothered to ridicule Heng Tianxua any longer, and his expression changed indeterminately. That's impossible. That's the 9th area. How could he possibly walk out alive? Heng Tianxua's gaze was terrifyingly icy cold, while his entire body emanated a terrifying imposing aura. It caused Wen Xiaoheng to feel suffocated, and he realized that this old geezer was completely infuriated. An accident has already occurred. Now isn't the time to consider all of this. As he spoke, Heng Tianxua looked out of the hall. Men! My lord! A boy appeared outside the hall. Heng Tianxua's voice was gloomy. Tell those 7 old fogies that I'll remove the restriction on the soul of anyone who kills Ling Xuanzi and return his freedom. Yes. The boy received his orders and left. Uncle, it has already come to this, yet you still don't intend to make a move yourself? When Xiaoheng couldn't help but ask. He was unable to understand. Heng Tianxua's gaze was deep, and he spoke with an expressionless face. The son of a noble family will not sit under the tree. I won't rashly take a risk before I figure out Ling Xuanzi's trump card. But who are those 7 old fellows? Can they do it? Wen Xiaoheng was extremely anxious in his heart. Heng Tianxua glanced at Wen Xiaoheng and said, In the countless years since the ancient times until now, there have been many insufferably arrogant and ruthless figures that disregarded the order of the city and caused trouble in the city without the slightest hesitation. In the end, all of them were suppressed without exception. Those that didn't have much value were executed at the first possible moment. On the other hand, those that were valuable had their soul restrictions placed on them, and they were reduced to soldiers of the city. They could only struggle on while at death's door and obey the control of our eternal emperor clans. Those 7 old fellows I spoke of are the most valuable group of ruthless figures in the countless years of the past. If they join forces and attack, then even I would have to utilize my full strength in order to suppress them. Wen Xiaoheng couldn't help but gasp when he heard this. He understood how formidable Heng Tianxua was. As the ancestor of a Dao, he was able to easily annihilate a 9th realm ancestor with a flip of his hand, and he was boundlessly terrifying. But Heng Tianxua actually had to use his full strength to deal with those 7 old fellows, and it was obvious how formidable they were. Wen Xiaoheng felt reassured when he thought up to here. We'll just wait here for news. In this way we can attack and retreat at will, and we don't have to worry about any mishaps or dangers occurring. At this moment, Heng Tianxua had calmed down and was steady like a mountain. When Xiaoheng nodded instinctively. Today was the day the trials ended. Starting City was also bustling with noise and excitement. Many people craned their necks in anticipation. They were waiting to see how many tyrannical characters would survive the dangerous and bloody trial world this time. A teleportation formation stood towering at the central area of the city. This place was filled with a sea of people since a long time ago, and not even a drop of water could trickle through. All of you disperse. The city governor's estate is going to capture the villain Ling Xuanzi today. Anyone that dares to interfere in this matter will be killed without mercy. All of you fuck off. Suddenly, a loud shout resounded like a thunderclap, and it rumbled through the heavens and the earth. Subsequently, group after group of armored guards that emanated murderous intent soared through the sky, and the baleful aura they emanated was simply like a raging storm. The area near the teleportation formation was in extreme chaos, and everyone's expressions turned grim as they left in panic. It wasn't long before the surroundings became deserted, and besides over 100 soldiers with terrifying auras, there was no one else here. These soldiers stood on guard at the side and waited in formation. Their killing intent converged together, and it threw the surroundings into chaos, causing even some Emperor Realm figures to be terrified. No one dared to approach. Ling Xuanzi hasn't even walked out of the trial world, yet he's already been put on the wanted list. He's definitely done something great to incur the wrath of the city governor's estate. Looks like a storm of blood will arise in Genesis City today. After the other areas of the city noticed this scene, many people guessed and discussed animatedly, and all of them were surprised and bewildered. How many years had it been since such an uproar like today had occurred in Genesis City? What exactly did Ling Xuanzi do? Time slowly passed by. Amidst the oppressive and murderous atmosphere, a strange fluctuation suddenly arose from the silent teleportation formation. It was like the curtains to the arrival of a storm had been drawn slowly at this moment. Chapter 2553. The ancient transmission array fluctuated with an obscure aura of space. Lin Sun, Feng Junlin, Xiang Xiaoyuan, Yu Duqiu, and other emperors appeared almost at the same time. In the past, every time the trial ended, it would attract the attention of everyone. It was a spectacular scene. Those who came back alive would be the center of attention and be admired and sought after by everyone. But today it was very different. The street was solemn and oppressive. Soldiers in black armor formed groups and sealed off the area. Almost at the first time, all eyes and killing intent locked on Lin Sun like a tide. The terrifying pressure that seemed to be real made the experts who returned with Lin Sun change their expressions and tense up. Sure enough, a big storm was going to happen today. We are here to capture Ling Xuanzi. Those who have nothing to do with us, please leave. A leader said coldly. He held a silver halberd and looked majestic and powerful. His whole body was filled with killing intent that disturbed the wind and cloud. Immediately, the people around Lin Sun left in a hurry. No one wanted to get involved in this matter for fear of being killed. Ling Xuanzi, good luck. If you die in this city, I will be a little disappointed. Feng Junlin glanced at Lin Sun and left with his people. The meaning in his words was very thought-provoking. Lin Sun glanced around calmly and did not say a word. Brother Ling, do you need help? As long as you agree, I can fight for a chance of survival for you. Xiang Xiaoyuan suddenly sent a voice projection. This beautiful, elegant woman carrying the purple and green twin sabers on her back had unexpectedly lent a helping hand at this moment. She was noble. Although she came from the boundless world, her mother was a big shot in a big force in the eternal world. She had the confidence to say such words. No, thank you. Lin Sun smiled and refused. Xiang Xiaoyuan did not insist. She only took a deep look at Lin Sun and turned to leave with Yu Duqiu. Soon, only Lin Sun was left. He stood all alone before the teleportation formation while his surroundings were surrounded by layer upon layer of soldiers, and such a scene caused the hearts of countless spectators to feel cold and despair. However, his expression was calm and indifferent as usual. The murderous aura in the heavens and the earth seethed, and it pressed down upon space to the point it seemed to have frozen. The surroundings were deathly silent, and the atmosphere was tense to the extreme. Ling Xuanzi, do you know your crimes? The commander in the lead spoke in an icy cold voice that rumbled like thunder and broke the silence. Boom! All the soldiers raised their weapons and pointed them at Lin Sun. The incomparably violent killing intent gathered together, making the whole world seem to collapse and make a mournful sound. This made people shudder with fear. However, Lin Sun seemed to be completely unaware of this, and his gaze swept ceaselessly as he asked with a frown. Where's Heng Tianxua? It's already at this time, so why hasn't he made an appearance? Instead, he's sending all of you servants to your deaths? His casual words caused the people who were watching this scene in secret to gasp, and their hearts trembled. This Ling Xuanzi. He actually directly declared war on the city lord. Where did he get the confidence to say such words in this heavily surrounded place? You're such a stubborn bastard. Even if you repent and atone for your sins now, it's useless. Even if you kneel down and beg for mercy, you'll be killed without mercy. The commander's face darkened, his killing intent boiling. The other soldiers were also brimming with murderous intent, ready to strike. It was also at this time that Lin Sun looked at the commander and the soldiers present, with a touch of disdain on his lip. Bang! The next moment, Lin Sun raised his hand, and Heng Zhan, who was captured by him, knelt down in the void. His body was bathed in blood, and his hair was disheveled. Lord Heng Zhan! Everyone's pupils constricted, and their faces changed greatly. Heng Zhan's identity was very special. He came from the Heng family, and in the city lord's mansion, he was the right-hand man of Heng Tianchu. But now, he was reduced to a prisoner and suffered great humiliation. Ling Xuanzi, you really don't want to live. Put him down. A soldier shouted angrily. Puff. Blood splattered. No one expected that Lin Sun had already made a move before the soldier finished his words. He flicked his finger, and a wisp of sword chi swept out, directly piercing the man's forehead. Blood splattered everywhere. At this moment, everyone's scalp was numb. All of this happened too suddenly. Who dared to kill people in the city? This violated the city rules, and he had to pay with his life. Who dared to imagine that Lin Sun would act so decisively and without scruples? In particular, his peerless sword was so sharp that even an Emperor Realm expert was killed in an instant. There was a commotion in the field. Those who were watching in the dark felt their blood boil, and their scalps tingled. There was no doubt that Ling Xuanzi was planning to completely break up with them and set off a storm of blood. Arg, the soldiers of the city lord's mansion were provoked on the spot. Many of them shouted and roared. All of this happened too suddenly. No one expected that Lin Sun would kill people in public. In short, those who stand in my way will die. At this moment, Lin Sun slapped Heng Zhan's head. With a bang, blood splattered everywhere, and Heng Zhan was turned into ashes. This scene completely made the eyes of the commander turn red, and he roared, "Go, kill this bastard! Kill! Kill!" The soldiers roared like thunder, and all kinds of lights danced in the air as they attacked together. Lin Sun's eyes were cold, and he didn't dodge. This was what he wanted, to kill in public and take revenge with blood. Boom! Countless bright sword chi whizzed out from the acupoints all over his body, turning into a dense storm of sword chi that rushed up to the sky and down to the ground. The void seemed to be torn apart by sharp blades, producing dense explosions. The sky was filled with sword light and the world dimmed. The scene was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. In just an instant, the dozen soldiers who rushed forward were all crushed by the sword chi. Their treasures shattered, their armors exploded, and their bodies turned into thick blood splattering everywhere. And this was only the first batch. As Lin Sun took a step forward, the sword chi whistled for 3,000 miles, traversing the 9 heavens, setting off a rain of blood in the field. He was calm, and his body glowed like a god walking in the world. Wherever he passed, the rain of blood and death turned into the cruelest scene of purgatory. Deafening explosions resounded without end. Countless weapons were shattered, and countless techniques were dispersed into a rain of light. Screams, roars, and screams rang out incessantly. The spectators in the dark felt a chill run down their spines, and they were horrified. The soldiers of the Castellan's mansion weren't ordinary figures. They were great emperors who ran amok in the past, and they were suppressed as slaves because they made mistakes. However, at this moment, even if they attacked together, they were like moths flying into a flame, and they were easily crushed. The heavens and the earth shook while the void collapsed in chaos. The buildings in the nearby area were like paper, and they were turned into powder by the terrifying torrent of battle. In just a moment, Lin Sun stretched out his hand and slapped. The head of the commander who led the guards was directly smashed, and his body exploded inch by inch. He died on the spot and was covered in blood. From the moment Lin Sun appeared to the moment he started killing wantonly, all of this was done in an extremely short period of time. Lin Sun was like a bolt of lightning, and no one could stop him. When the commander of the guards was slapped to death, there was a short period of silence in the field. But what followed was a clamor that soared into the sky, and the city was in an uproar. They'd never seen such a daring person, and it was shocking. Ling Xuanzi's combat strength is too terrifying. Those are hundreds of soldiers of the Castellan's mansion, which are comparable to hundreds of emperors. How could they be so weak? Heng Zhan died, and those guards are no match for him. Could it be that only Heng Tianxua can suppress him? No one would have thought that such a thing would happen. Killing the people of the Castellan's mansion on the street was unscrupulous and lawless. No one would have thought that Lin Sun would be so invincible and powerful under such a siege. He alone swept through the entire field. This made the hearts of Emperor Ju Tong and Ancestor Nine Realms, who were watching the battle secretly, palpitate, and they couldn't calm down. Boom! Suddenly, a scrawny old man with scraggly beard and hair appeared out of thin air. His bronze-colored skin was suffused with terrifying power as he punched out. The sky fell, the earth cracked, and the sun and moon shook. The power of this punch was extremely powerful. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly, and he bent his finger like a sword and swept it out. The fist and sword collided, and a myriad of lights burst out. The figure of the scrawny old man shook, and he couldn't help but snort coldly. He stepped forward again and waved his fist to kill. He was swift and overbearing, and his fist was lofty and heavy like a divine mountain. It oppressed the world to rumble, and all kinds of strange phenomena and light rain fell like a waterfall. This scrawny old man was terrifying. It's him, Emozhan, regarded as one of the 7 sinners of Starting City. He was a peerless madman who was suppressed because he killed a 9th Realm commander of the Castellan's mansion 10,000 years ago. Someone exclaimed as he recognized the scrawny old man. 7 sinners. They represented the 7 most formidable and ferocious figures that had been suppressed in Genesis City for countless years. Every single one of them possessed extraordinary strength, and they'd once stirred up trouble and committed great crimes in the city. Even if they were suppressed in the end, their existences couldn't be overlooked. At this moment, when people learned that it was Emozhan who attacked, it immediately caused a sensation, and many emperors were stunned. Young man, I was just like you all those years ago. I ran amok in the city and stirred up blood, but in the end, I was still trapped here, and my fate is no longer in my control. I advise you to stop struggling, because you'll only be suppressed in the end. The scrawny old man spoke as he attacked. Lin Sun answered him with 2 words full of disdain: trash. How could a peerless figure who was truly unbridled, arrogant, and disdainful choose to serve as a slave in exchange for a chance to struggle at death's door? What was he if he wasn't trash? The scrawny old man's face darkened. He was furious, and his killing became more and more fierce. Boom! His fists were fierce and fierce, as if there were stars exploding in his fists, bursting out an unparalleled breath of destruction. Angry with shame? Trash is trash. Don't believe it? I'll kill you now. Then, as Lin Sun ran his breath, the whole world was shaking, as if it had interfered with the law of the Great Way, making his power more and more powerful. At the same time, Lin Sun's palms and fingers drew a strange arc in the air, like an antelope hanging its horn without a trace. Boom! A sword chi suddenly appeared and ran through the sky, shaking all the stars in the sky. It was incomparably fierce. This was a sword strike that combined all the mysteries of the supreme sword scriptures. There was only one word: fast. It seemed to break the shackles of space, break the shackles of time, unrestrained, indestructible, and omnipotent. Puff! A sword pierced through Emozhan's head. The fierce sword chi pierced through his fists, smashed Emozhan's defense, and pierced through his eyebrows at an incredible speed, coming out from the back of his head with a string of bursting blood. Even his skull was blown up. P.S. I'll continue to update tonight. Chapter 2554. One strike. Emozhan, who was regarded as one of the 7 sinners, was killed. His skull shattered, and his body exploded under the cover of the unparalleled sword chi. Blood splattered everywhere and his body perished. No one expected Lin Sun's attack to be so sharp, so strong. It was unknown how many people's hearts trembled, shocked by this bloody scene. Emojan was a veteran Ninth Realm ancestor with an extremely fierce cultivation, but he died in one strike. After a short silence, suddenly, a cold conversation sounded. "This guy is tricky. Why don't we attack him together?" "Sure. Whoever kills him will get the credit." Along with the voice, 6 figures appeared in the void one after another. There were men and women, and as soon as they appeared, they attacked Lin Sun. Boom! All kinds of light flew up, turning this place into a purgatory. They surrounded Lin Sun and attacked him. The endless divine light flooded the long street. If it weren't for the ancient taboo formation in the city, not to mention this street, even the city would have been torn apart and turned into ashes. Red River Ancestor, Thousand Old Man, Dragon Crane Emperor. Except for the dead Emojan, the 7 sinners of the starting city have attacked together. It's strange. Why didn't the city lord show up after such a big commotion? Let's see if Ling Xuanzi can get through this. The spectators in the dark recognized the 6 terrifying figures. They all held their breath and paid close attention. Swish! Lin Sun was extremely fast. His figure moved like a flickering light, shuttling between all kinds of spiritual tools and fighting against all kinds of magical skills. Go! With a cold snort, an old man in a blood-red robe flashed in a strange way. The sky halberd in his hand chopped down fiercely. This was a peerless, vicious weapon that lived up to its name. The blood-colored halberd shaft and the snow-white halberd blade tore through the heavens, releasing terrifying whistling sounds. It was as if a group of gods and devils were roaring, following the side of the great halberd. It tore through the universe, destroying everything in its path, terrifying beyond compare. At the same time, the other 5 people roared together and attacked with all their strength. Magical skills and imperial weapons were like a group of meteorites, powerful and terrifying, all rushing towards Lin Sun. Crack! There was a cracking sound on the street. A part of the supreme restriction covering the city was broken, which made everyone's expression change. Just how terrifying was this halberd? At this moment, the 6 ferocious criminals attacked together, putting Lin Sun in a life-or-death situation. In everyone's view, as the halberd fell, Lin Sun would not be able to defend himself no matter what. However, at this moment, Lin Sun punched out with his fist, which was as deep as a cauldron. Dang! A trembling sound resounded through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Many people's ears were in piercing pain and their souls were pounding. Blood flowed out from their mouth. The destructive power of this strike was quite apparent. What? Impossible! How did he block the attack with his hand? How can a peak 7th stage Emperor Realm expert have such heaven-defying strength? Many people were dumbfounded. They simply couldn't believe all of this. From the beginning until the end, Lin Sun had been barehanded and hadn't used any treasures. But now he'd even smashed his fist onto the blade of the halberd, causing it to buzz and bounce off. Rumble! At the same time, his entire body shone, scattering all of the attacking power. A rain of light rumbled and splashed everywhere, but he was completely unharmed. At this moment, Lin Sun was like a peerless demon. His black hair was loose. Although he was fighting alone, his power was not reduced at all. Go to hell! Suddenly, Lin Sun's figure rose to the sky, and he punched again with unparalleled power. Boom! The dazzling fist crushed a long and narrow crack in the sky. At the end of the crack, a man in azure armor suddenly burst out like a firework, and his blood dyed the sky. This was absolutely a domineering punch. No one could stop it. It was fast and fierce, with blood and chi like the sea, and it was extremely powerful. So strong. It was unknown how many people were horrified, shaken by this fist, their minds shaken. Under siege, Lin Sun still had the power to kill. The strength of Lin Sun's combat power had completely subverted everyone's cognition. Even the others who were besieging Lin Sun felt a chill in their heart, and their expressions became more and more dignified. They didn't dare to hold back at all, as if they were desperate. Clang! A purple spear suddenly pierced out from the hand of a middle-aged man in a white robe. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. The power of this spear was too great. When the purple spear pierced out, it was like a purple sun exploding, and the light and fire were all over the sky. This was a spear that could kill gods and demons. The brilliant sky seemed to tremble and was about to collapse. The whole ancient city was shaking violently as if it was about to disintegrate. Kill! Others roared and followed the middle-aged man in a white robe to attack. At this moment, a strange light flashed in Lin Sun's eyes, as if he had sensed something. Then, he no longer hesitated. Buzz! The abyssal sword cauldron, which had been transformed in the peerless catastrophe and now became brand new, appeared at this moment. Boom! The sky was falling and the earth was cracking. The abyssal sword cauldron was flowing with hundreds of millions of lights, and a world like the universe emerged on the body of the cauldron. The sky, the earth, the latitude, the sun, the moon, the stars, the flowers, birds, insects, fish, all kinds of wonderful scenes emerged, brilliant and boundless. Amidst the explosion, the purple battle spear that was slashing down was directly shattered and exploded with a loud bang. The abyssal sword cauldron shook slightly and then turned upside down. The mouth of the cauldron rushed down, and a Taoist sword swept out at an incredible speed. Puff! The middle-aged man in a white robe was cut in an instant, and his figure turned into ashes. Another person was killed. And this was just the beginning. As the abyssal sword cauldron rose and fell, the light fell, thousands of spirits appeared, and the river of stars flowed, protecting Lin Sun below. He rose into the air and launched a real peerless attack at this moment. Boom! The abyssal sword cauldron rumbled and crashed forward, causing the void to collapse. Two people didn't dodge in time. Not only were their treasures crushed by the abyssal sword cauldron, but their bodies were also smashed into a bloody mess. Hundreds of millions of lights fell down, crushing their muscles and bones, and splashing their flesh and blood. No! How could it be? They screamed in horror and turned into two clouds of blood mist. The hidden spectators were all horrified. The might of this cauldron was too great. Merely the strands of light that descended from it were able to crush two ninth-realm ancestors that were boundlessly ferocious. That level of might was simply unimaginable and unimaginably terrifying. Is this an emperor's extreme weapon? It's extremely difficult for the ancestors to refine and possess such a supreme treasure. It's almost like a legend. It must be an emperor's extreme weapon. Only such a legendary supreme emperor's extreme weapon can have such extraordinary power that it can crush a world and shake the sun, moon, and stars. The abyssal sword cauldron was too dazzling. There were the sun, moon, stars, birds, beasts, mountains, rivers, and all kinds of spirits on it. It was full of chaotic chi. It made people feel extremely depressed and palpitate from a distance. Let's go. There were only 2 of the 7 sinners left. Seeing such a scene, they were all frightened and wanted to escape at the first time. But how could Lin Sun let them do as they wished? He didn't move, but the abyssal sword cauldron flew across the sky. The abyssal sword cauldron buzzed and released a brilliant light, rushing to one of them. Inside the abyssal sword cauldron, a simple and unadorned Taoist sword cauldron flashed in the void and cut another person. Boom! Puff! 2 completely different sounds rang out one after another. One person was killed by the abyssal sword cauldron, and his body was incinerated by the rolling Taoist light. The other person was beheaded by the Taoist sword cauldron and died. Everything happened so fast that no one could even react. Even the powerhouses who were watching the battle in the dark couldn't help but be dumbfounded and break out in a cold sweat. This was too terrifying. At this time, the 7 sinners had all been wiped out. In the messy scene, only Lin Sun stood alone. His figure was tall and straight, and he was as calm and composed as when he first walked out of the teleportation formation. When people woke up from the shock, they realized that Lin Sun had already left. There was no one left in the bloody and chaotic scene. He must have gone to the Castellan's mansion. The same thought popped up in many people's minds. In an instant, countless people in the dark rushed in the direction of the Castellan's mansion. It was too terrifying. Ling Xuanzi single-handedly killed everyone, killed the guards of the Castellan's mansion, killed the 7 great sinners, and stirred up a storm of blood along the way. And now, he was clearly killing his way to the Castellan's mansion. Many people's mouths were dry. How many years had it been since such a bloody and chaotic event happened? Who would have thought that they would see it today? The Castellan's mansion. It represented the dignity of the Eternal World's immortal Emperor clan. Since ancient times, who dared to provoke them? But today, a ruthless person like Ling Xuanzi appeared. Why do I feel that there's something strange about the battle just now? Before he used the furnace, Ling Xuanzi seemed to have been holding back and deliberately stalling for time. Yu Duqiu frowned. He and Xiang Xiaoyuan had watched the entire battle in the dark, and he couldn't calm down. But now that he thought about it calmly, he found something strange. That's right. If he used the treasure immediately, with the combat strength he displayed, he wouldn't have taken so long. Xiang Xiaoyuan was also a little puzzled. Deliberately stalling for time? What was he trying to do? Let's go to the Castellan's mansion to take a look, Yu Duqiu said and turned to leave. Xiang Xiaoyuan also followed him. If one looked down from the sky, they would find that countless emperor auras were gathering in the direction of the Castellan's mansion in Beginning City at this moment. Obviously, the earth-shattering battle just now made them completely unable to calm down, and their minds were completely attracted. At this moment, in the Castellan's mansion, Heng Tianxua was already in a state of extreme shock and anger. The forces sent to capture Ling Xuanzi were all dead. The 7 old things also died one after another. There was no need for others to report this series of death. Heng Tianxua already knew about it from the jade tokens that were continuously shattering. Does this kid really want to overturn the heavens? Heng Tianxua's expression was grim, and his eyes were terrifyingly cold. Uncle, what should we do? When Xiaoheng's emotions were completely out of control. His expression was as if he had lost his parents, and it was extremely ugly. He even felt an indescribable chill, and for the first time, he felt an indescribable panic and fear. What should we do? Of course we'll kill this kid. Heng Tianxua's face was livid. He stood up, and his aura was like a volcano that was about to erupt, causing the hall to shake violently. P.S. Send more updates to me.